Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 71, CH 71, Find a Way. Hinata walked into the training area 41 with Suzuki Uchiha trailing behind her. She flared her chakra in a specific pattern the second she entered Ren's sensing range, letting him know there would be uninvited guests, so he and Ino should dismiss or hide all their shadow clones. Taking the Uchiha to their training ground was one thing, but showing him their actual training? No, thank you very much. Ren might have some issues with some of Konoha's authorities, but honestly, the Uchiha boy could be an authority on issues. Having to go to the academy with him was enough for Hinata. She didn't want to be stuck with him all day, especially not with Ino nearby. That's the literal definition of hell. And she didn't want him to get too interested in their training either because she just knew he would have tried to spy on them. Just like he couldn't help but spy on her rear ever since she started leading him here. Joy. They finally entered the clearing, and Hinata smiled as she saw Ren. Her smile only widened when he gave her a very unimpressed look after glancing at Suzuki. "Hello, teacher," she serenely said as she approached Ren. "I am sorry for being late. I was followed by my classmate and tried to shake him off, but it didn't work." She sighed, a bit of her frustration seeping into her tone. "I see. We will probably have to work on that aspect of being ninja, then." It was a bit embarrassing for both Hinata and Ren that she couldn't run away from an academy student, but they never trained in evading a chase, so Ren couldn't give her a hard time for this. His usual advice for evading chase would be to just bitch slap their stalker, but, well, that would have been a problem when it came to the last Uchiha. He wanted to know who trains me. Hinata continued with an exasperated shrug, making Ren rub the bridge of his nose as the Uchiha boy eagerly nodded. "Yes, it is nice to meet you." Suzuki started, only to be completely ignored by Ren, who kept looking at Hinata. "So, why not just tell him instead of taking him here?" he flatly asked, and Hinata's lips twitched in amusement while Suzuki's gaze darkened. "I don't want to deal with him, so I decided to make him your problem," Hinata nonchalantly admitted, and Ren noticed that Suzuki looked a bit hurt at that admission. It made him inwardly sigh. He didn't need more teenage drama in his life. "It is because he is staring at your ass, isn't it?" Ren raised an eyebrow at the girl, causing the Uchiha boy to gape and look like a startled deer staring into headlights as he tried to sputter denials, but Hinata just casually nodded. "It's quite awkward." "Fine. Go practice throwing senbon or something," Ren grumpily said, sending Hinata off. He couldn't say he enjoyed it when he noticed Suzuki staring at his girl's posterior, but Hinata was a big girl who could gently fist the boy's balls off with laughable ease if she was so inclined. She did not need his protection. While a part of him did want to give Suzuki a hard time for it, the more grounded and calm part simply admitted that the boy had good taste. Ren turned towards Suzuki, who watched him awkwardly, looking almost ready to bolt. He did not expect the conversation to steer in that way and was now deeply outside of his comfort zone. Ren smiled a bit at the teenager. He was 15 now, and yet, despite looking similar to his canon counterpart, he was just so inexperienced. Innocent. Not yet batshit insane? There was still that spark of naivete in the boy, despite the anger at the world apparent in his gaze. "So, you want training?" Ren hummed to himself. "Yes," Suzuki answered, determination filling his eyes and posture. "Nope. Not gonna happen." He gave the boy an easygoing eye smile. It was his civic duty to prepare him for the horror of being Kakashi's student. And if he pissed the boy off for his own amusement in the process, well, multitasking was an important skill. Suzuki didn't instantly burst into an angsty tirade as Ren slightly expected. Instead, the boy tried to stay reasonable. "I can pay you. I can even double what the Hyagas are paying you." Ren's smile fell at that, and he sighed as he ran his hand through his hair. "Okay." Treating the boy like an angsty character from a bashing fanfic felt bad, especially when the boy was at least trying to be nice. So, Ren switched into a serious mode and decided to deal with the 15-year-old teenage duckbutt as if he were an adult. "You sure can." Still not happening. Suzuki scowled and balled his hands into fists, his body tensing in outrage as he asked, "Why?" He was visibly upset, gritting his teeth as he barely kept his temper in check and only stopping himself from a long, angry tirade because Ren sharply raised his palm in a stop gesture. "Politics," he told the boy. "Yeah. There are some people in this village, high-ranking people, who don't want you to get stronger." Ren nodded. "Getting stronger means an increased chance to be promoted, which means more dangerous missions. You are the last Uchiha, and while they can't order you to stay in the village and screw every girl they throw at you, they will certainly try their damnedest to keep you safe, and breeding with indirect means. Is that why my applications for early graduation were all rejected?" Suzuki asked, glaring into the distance. Ren smiled at him. Now he was getting it. The boy wasn't as stupid as his hair looked. "Most likely. I am not going to teach you because the political repercussions to me would be quite distasteful. I am just a chinin. I don't really have the necessary clout in the village to sidestep these things." That wasn't exactly true. Ren could have taken Suzuki under his wing while showing his middle finger to any supposed retribution by the higher UPS. They needed to at least appear reasonable and couldn't outright punish him for teaching the boy. But dealing with the indirect problems they would cause him would be a massive hassle. It just wasn't really worth it. He had already knocked out the Umbu or root operative, following the boy with his shadow clone when they entered the training ground. The last thing he wanted was to have Umbu or root ninjas permanently skulking around his training grounds. Then how am I supposed to get stronger? Sasuke glared at his feet, his voice betraying the sheer rage simmering under the surface as he realized the system was hugely skewed against him. It didn't matter how much the village praised him for being the last loyal Uchiha, how some shops literally offered him things for free. In things that mattered, the village did screw him up. After living in Konoha and having a direct insight into these things, Ren can say with a clear conscience that Sasuke was smart to leave Konoha in canon. The Hokage did not want him to go after his brother. So, he tried to hamper his growth by not offering him advanced opportunities. Danzo did not want Sasuke to grow stronger in fear that the boy would one day learn about the massacre. He wanted nothing more than to kill Sasuke, but he couldn't do it while Itachi was alive. The Hyuga clan did not want Sasuke to grow stronger because they did not want the Uchiha clan to regain their influence. And others in the council either did not care or were far too easily persuaded with bullshit reasons. Despite how many fanfics had the council licked Sasuke's posterior, in reality, they were happy to use his existence for propaganda or advertisement, but they really did not care all that much about him or his goals. Watching the teenager sink deeper into his emo mode, Ren sighed and turned toward Ino before shouting at her, "Ino, give me your scroll on the basics of elemental ninjutsu." The blonde girl stopped trying to set her leaf on fire with her glare and raised her head as her eyebrows furrowed. She glanced at Ren, then at Sasuke. A light bulb went off in her head as she nodded and unsealed the scroll Ren asked for and tossed it to him before returning to her task. All of this was done without even a single word, and Sasuke was staring in disbelief at their interaction. Ren smirked. The Uchiha had never seen Ino actually invested and focused on something. He probably expected her to shout and fangirl about him. Being ignored by the girl must have been a new experience for him. Ren caught the scroll and offered it to Sasuke after unsealing a bit of chakra paper. "Here. When a Chunin wants to get a promotion to Jonin, he needs to have techniques of at least 2 elemental natures. Exceptions full of natural guyness excluded, of course. The scroll can teach you how to train the first exercise of elemental chakra. The paper will tell you your elemental affinity when you push your chakra into it. I'd recommend focusing on your affinity first." Sasuke took the scroll with trembling hands, as if in disbelief that he actually did get something that would make him stronger. He gave Ren a wary, inquisitive look, but when Ren nodded at him, the boy took the scroll and unrolled it, only to see the contents with a massive amount of obnoxiously colorful and girly notes on almost every inch of the document. Oh, and ponies. There was an excessive amount of ponies, too. Sasuke's expression twisted into an abject horror before he gave the smirking Ren a "what the hell is this" look. Chuckling, Ren spoke, "Ino is great at ninjutsu. She also loves to take notes. A lot of notes." "You don't say." Sasuke whispered in a horrified deadpan, and Ren just shrugged. "Stop being a sissy." "Yes, the notes are pink and orange and purple, whatever." He rolled his eyes with a snort. "Every note in there can help you understand the exercises better. Ino is done with the scroll, so you can have it." "What? It wasn't his right to give Sasuke something that belonged to Ino?" "Pushed. He was her teacher. Of course, he could rightfully appropriate her property. Teacher's privileges." Sasuke's expression turned conflicted. Thank you." It was obvious that the boy lacked somebody showing him genuine concern and giving him genuine help. Well, Ren was in a good mood today, but he wasn't going to be the boy support pillar all the way through. "Thank Ino. It's her scroll," he nonchalantly said, causing Sasuke's expression to twist in distaste, much to Ren's amusement. Obviously, interacting with his blonde student was not something Sasuke wanted to do. "I will," he grudgingly muttered. "There is a risk of injury if you intend to train in elemental chakra alone," Ren told him, a wicked grin spreading on his lips in his mind, "but Hinata is training to be a good medical ninja. Feel free to ask her to heal you if you need it. Just keep in mind that her training is secret." Here, that should teach her. Bringing in strays to their training ground as if he was running a daycare. Had she really thought there would be no repercussions? Sasuke was a training maniac. Ren would eat his forehead protector if the boy didn't require healing every 2 days. And as a great teacher, it was Ren's duty to provide Hinata with a willing lab rat. The fact that she disliked Sasuke was just the cherry on top. Other than that, you have money. Why not hire ninjas to train you? Since Ren had started to give the boy advice, he decided to do it properly. Sasuke wanted a way to get stronger? Sure. Ren could give that to him. The rest would be on the boy's determination, but he could tell him how to game the system. Ren couldn't wait to see the result. He wondered how Sasuke would develop with a proper path. "Really? I can do that?" Sasuke asked incredulously, taken aback that he had never thought of it. "Well, duh." Ren rolled his eyes again. It was only natural that the boy didn't consider this. He was only a kid. How do you think literally 90% of Chunin get to learn things? Not everybody had their personal Jonin instructor, after all. The higher UPS can't stop you from posting a mission request, even if said mission is to train you for a few hours. Granted, most high-level ninjas will not accept such a request. They can earn more money and contribute to the village by taking higher-ranked missions. But your clan name should help you there. And wasn't that a kick in the balls? Ren still remembered he had to wait weeks until somebody finally decided to teach him the shadow clones, and even then, it was only because Ebisu wanted to dodge the responsibility of tutoring Hinata. But Sasuke? Ren was certain that the boy was going to have so many Jonin wanting to stick their head up his ass, all willing to teach him, that he will need to chase them away with a stick. Unfortunately, the world wasn't fair. There will be many people who will recognize that you will one day sit on the village council, and they will try to make connections with you. Don't let them manipulate you. But be smart. Use it. They want to hamper your growth? Just find a way they can't block without looking unreasonable. And then, grow stronger. It's that simple. Ren shrugged and started feeling quite awkward when he noticed that Sasuke was almost not breathing with how enraptured he was by his speech. He had the worrisome feeling that he had just gained a new, unwanted fan. Why couldn't he just leave the kid to Orochimaru again? Chapter 72, ch 72, Recommendations. Do you have any recommendations? Sasuke eagerly asked Ren, who gave him a long look, but then a wicked idea entered his mind and made him inwardly grin like a loon. Sage, forgive him, for he is about to sin. But it was for the greater good of his continued entertainment, so it is all good. You have around 7 months until graduation, he told Sasuke gravely, with a very serious expression to show him he is giving his question the due attention. So, I think one of the most important areas you can focus on is physical training. A ninja needs a strong and fit body no matter what other ninja art you concentrate on later. And frankly, it was not as if he intended to mislead the boy. His advice was spot on. There was a reason why he focused on physical conditioning so much when he started training his girls, or why he made the gravity seals. Physical training was the cornerstone of everything. But, if you want a good and dedicated teacher when it comes to taijutsu, Ren looked the boy straight in the eyes to convey the importance of what he was about to say. You must approach Mato Guy, Konoha's sublime green beast. He just barely managed to keep his serious expression from breaking into a grin. But it won't be easy, young Uchiha. For Guy is the strongest taijutsu user in the village. As he said that, Ren waited for the upcoming cringe, but Sasuke didn't react at all, outside of badly hidden awe in his expression. Ren understood that the boy had never seen or rather didn't recognize who Guy was. Hook. Now he only needs to do some damage control so Sasuke doesn't run screaming for his mommy when he sees Guy's Guyness for the first time. In Ren's previous life, they had Giga Chad. Here, they had Giga Guy. And nobody could prove that it was Ren who subtly introduced that meme to Konoha. But still, not many people could keep their composure in front of Guy. Granted, Ren said and scrunched his face as if he was admitting something embarrassing. The man is very eccentric. But everything Guy does has a reason. His clothes? They are the best practical attire for training. Honestly? He wasn't even joking here. It may be the biggest fashion reject in the village, but everything Guy said about his spandex was true. How did he know? Don't ask him, please. His attitude? It trains mental fortitude. In other people. Living through it on a regular basis will make you mentally strong, whether you want it or not. Not a lie, just a bit of misdirection. But Ren was a ninja. No, he didn't feel bad. Who knows? Interacting with Guy was probably the best way to cure Sasuke's trauma, by replacing it with a different sort of trauma. Hell, even his hairstyle has a purpose. Its purpose is to make you look silly, but hey, it is still a purpose. Itachi would no doubt underestimate Sasuke if the boy showed up to fight him with spandex and a bowl-cut hairstyle. He would probably just give up on life and succumb to his illness right there and then. He sounds cool. Sasuke, for the first time since they met, smiled. It was a small thing, but a smile nevertheless. Oh, sweet summer child. Line. Yes. Ren exclaimed before realizing he had gotten a bit too passionate and calmed himself down. Ahem. When you meet him for the first time, you will find him silly. I just want you to not judge the book by its cover. There. That should make Sasuke take Guy seriously instead of dismissing him as a weirdo. But that was not enough to make him don the spandex and get a new hairdo. So, for the finishing line, Ren decided to get heavy-handed. Besides, if there is anybody in the village who can teach you how to fight Sharingan and actually win with pure taijutsu, it is Guy. Ren said before pausing a bit to let his message sink in. A moment later, when Sasuke's eyes widened, Ren continued with the most tantalizing part of his sales pitch. And if there is anybody who has a good shot at defeating your brother, it is also Guy. Ren realized he might have underestimated the boy's mental issues because, hearing him, Sasuke almost started hyperventilating. His eyes widened, and he showed an unnatural hunger while his body was tense, as if ready for a fight. Sinker. Unlike his canon counterpart, this Sasuke was oddly calm and far less angsty. He had 2 more years to come to terms with things, so that probably helped. But right now, looking at his unhinged expression, Ren realized the boy was always just a dick hair away from triggering a full-blown mental freakout. It only hardened his resolve to get the boy some of that sweet Giga Guy therapy. He is going to have the duck butt run in spandex with a bowl-cut hairstyle in no time. Ren's eyes sparkled. Go forth, Sasuke, and become the next crimson fiery beast of Konoha. For you youth. But Sasuke, it won't be easy to become Guy's student. Ren properly cautioned the Uchiha boy. The man is busy. He even got his own genin team recently. You will probably need to approach him slowly. Ask him for tips for physical training and on proper diet. Then, properly follow them and show up next month for more. Or you can ask to join him for his morning training. The worst that can happen is being rejected, but you should not give up. People in his previous world thought that Guy would accept anybody to train with him, but it wasn't that easy. He wouldn't train everybody who asked for it. He would first put them through a hell of a physical workout to see if they were worthy of his time, and most people quit right there and then. Those that last past that? They quit a week later because of Guy's antics. There was a reason why not many people approached him for training despite him being the foremost expert on taijutsu in Konoha. Ren decided to convey that to Sasuke. The man cherishes determination and hard work to an insane degree. You should be prepared for hell if you dash, I'll do it. No matter what, Sasuke proclaimed with burning determination filling his gaze, and Ren inwardly cringed because it reminded him of the scene from the anime where Rock Lee had passionate fire in his eyes. Good, he said with a small twitch of his left eye. Maybe you should request a spar with his pupil, Rock Lee. The boy was dead last in his graduating class a few months ago. It should show you the effects of guys training. Was that too petty? That's what Sasuke gets for making him cringe. Of course, Lee was the dead last because in everything other than taijutsu, he flunked. He only passed because Guy wanted to mentor him personally. But from what Ren knew, Lee had been training under Guy ever since he was like 12. If Sasuke does request that spar, then may he rest in pieces because this Lee was already on the cusp of entering his Shippuden arc while the rest of his peers were still pre-graduation chumps. It was as if the green-clad boy was trying to show everybody what a real main character should look like. But Sasuke couldn't read the schadenfreude in Ren's body language. He was too inexperienced for that. So, the boy just firmly nodded, adorably thinking that Ren had his well-being at heart when he gave that advice. Well, having a rival would certainly help Sasuke. With his mental issues and odd mix of inferiority and superiority complex, having a rival who he deems beneath him but also who is constantly surpassing his performance wouldn't be good for the boy. But having a rival who is stronger than him, and now he needs to put in the effort to surpass? Ren thought that would lit the fire under the boy's ass and make his determination skyrocket. It was the exact thing Sasuke needed. Alas, with a bit of disgruntlement, Ren had to admit that his plan might not work. Sasuke might still chicken out of Guy's training. The path of Jiga Guy was not for everybody. So, giving the boy some alternatives would be prudent. Or you can also approach Korone Ui. She is the foremost expert on genjutsu in the village, Ren said, and Sasuke didn't look extremely interested in that prospect. Genjutsu was probably not one of the boy's interests, but Ren only smiled. Your brother, and there was that burning hatred rearing its ugly head again as Sasuke almost snarled, is specialized in speed in genjutsu. He can do different things, but these two are his bread and butter. Realizing that Ren was actually giving him proper tips about his brother's fighting style, Sasuke stilled and listened with rapt attention, as if he was a man who was being offered his first bite of sustenance after a month of going hungry. That's an extremely deadly combination. If you want to beat him, you will need to be very good at identifying and dismissing genjutsu, otherwise, you will just lose by default. And you will have to be fast enough to be able to react to his speed. That's why you recommended taijutsu and genjutsu specialists to me. Sasuke concluded with a grateful nod, looking as if he suddenly gained an epiphany. Frankly? No. Ren recommended Korone to Sasuke because the woman deserved something good to happen to her. Ever since Ren's first mission to the Land of Waves, where he convinced her to kill Gato, her career has been spiraling down. She was still Jonin. Any notion of demoting her was shot down by the Hokage. But she now had a massive black mark on her records. Training the last Uchiha in Genjutsu could help her a lot with recouping the lost respect. Ren was doing this mostly for Korone rather than Sasuke. Then again, it was not like one of them had to be a loser in this deal. It will help them both. People in Ren's previous life loved to mock Korone for using Genjutsu against Itaki. But these basement dwellers were not very bright. Korone was a Genjutsu mistress. Genjutsu was her main skill. Oh my god. She used Genjutsu against Itaki. She's stupid. Unga bunga. Ren mockingly thought as he remembered these people. Seriously, what was she supposed to do, you nitwit? Drop her clothes and try to seduce him and the fish face? Yeah, that would work so much better for her. Sure, throwing genjutsu at somebody like Itaki might look foolish, but it was Korone's best skill. It was her best bet at survival in that fight. She was average at taijutsu, ninjutsu, and weaponry skills. Itaki was better at all of these than her. So, Korone's options were pretty much only to roll over and die like all the basement dwellers who liked to mock her would do or try to hit him with her best attack, hoping it would stall him enough for reinforcements to arrive. And sure, it didn't work very well. Itaki was a master at genjutsu, and on top of that, he had Sharingan. He was the equivalent of a pro gamer with cheat codes, and there was no report button in real life. The fact that Korone managed to stall him for a while with her genjutsu and came out of that fight without injury was already a massive win for her. She was a B-rank ninja, an entry-level jonin, and Itaki was on the higher end of S-rank. Nobody can doubt her prowess in genjutsu after that, even if she had lost. The last thing I can recommend to you is to try your hand at swordsmanship, Ren told Sasuke, blatantly using his foreknowledge to nudge the boy in the right direction. Even if you do become Guy's student and he makes you into a deadly taijutsu master, you will be 10 times deadlier with a weapon in hand as long as you know how to use it well. This was one thing that irked him about Guy. The man would have been unstoppable with a rod made of chakra metal, but he simply refused to use a weapon. It was stupid beyond belief. It showed that a person might be the expert on something but still be a damn retard when it comes to actually using it effectively. And while Konoha is not known for its sword users, there are still quite a few skilled people in our village when it comes to wielding a blade. That, at least, seemed to pique the boy's interest more than genjutsu. Sure, it wouldn't be remotely similar to having a swordmaster like Orikimura personally tutoring him, but Ren believed that Sasuke could still become extremely good at sword wielding, and if he properly listened to his previous advice and worked on his lightning release, he might even eventually recreate his canon skill set. After all, the boy was definitely still getting Kakashi as his Jonin instructor. And with that, most likely, Chidori would be his in time. Ren hoped the Uchiha would see the glory of spandex and a bowl haircut by then. He did his best to make the boy see the light of youth. The rest was on Guy to show him the path to salvation, the path to becoming a Gege guy. In the name of spring, youth, and hard work. Amen. Chapter 73, ch 73, Hiruzen and Danzo. Hiruzen Sarutobi was enjoying his day by drowning in the frustration of paperwork. But today was special. He had gotten several reports about a certain boy of great importance to the village doing something not great for the village's image, and Hiruzen had no idea how to solve that problem. It wasn't as if he could just order him. Well, he could, but, no, that would have been stupid. But on the other hand, then again, it was the political repercussions to him versus the hit to the village's image. Arg! Hiruzen got a headache thinking about it. The situation was the picture-perfect example of damned if you do and damned if you do not. And just when his frustration started getting to the boiling point, the door to his office suddenly opened, and Danzo Shinura walked in as if he owned the place. Hiruzen slowly raised his head toward his old friend and gave him a gimlet eye. He and Danzo went way back, but he felt their friendship also stayed way back. Hiruzen was willing to forgive a lot, but the first time his old friend tried to assassinate him, their friendship was done. They were done. Sadly, things are seldom as simple in politics. Sure, he could have Danzo arrested and even executed on the spot. He was the Hokage. He could give the order, and his ninjas would follow it. The problem was what would come later. Not only did he have no idea how many root operatives Danzo had, and if the man died, they could do some major damage to the village, but Danzo also had many connections to the nobles and ministers in the daimyo's court. Connections that would definitely question his death. And if it was only he who would suffer the consequences, Hiruzen would gladly accept that. But unfortunately, it was the village as a whole that would gain their ire, not just the Hokage. Hiruzen had to give it to his old friend. He knew how to make killing him very inconvenient. He also had to admit that he didn't have the will to play these political games anymore when he took the hat after the Kyuubi's attack. He was old, and he got his well-deserved retirement only to have it ripped away from him. It made him furious just thinking about it. He'd prefer being the one to seal the demon to this. Why couldn't Minato wait just a few minutes more? Hiruzen inwardly sighed. He knew he was being unreasonable. Hesitation during a battle meant death and loss. Minato could not hesitate. But that doesn't change anything about the fact that Hiruzen had to deal with the whole mess left behind and try to put the pieces together so Konoha would not get curb-stomped by the other 4 villages in the next war. He was busier than ever. And the blows just didn't stop coming. Hyuga Incident. Kurama Clan Massacre. Uchiha Clan Massacre. Whenever Hiruzen finally had a breather and could divert some of his attention to dealing with Danzo, he instantly got another golden plate full of shit served to him. Because of that, he had to tolerate Danzo in his court. At least the Uchiha massacre allowed him to order the dissolution of the root, not that it was much of a consolation prize. Hiruzen wasn't stupid. He knew that Danzo just went to the ground with his organization. Obviously, he didn't dissolve shit. The academy reforms were Hiruzen's last banzai. He fully expected them to kill his career. He expected that he would have to resign from his position. And things looked very shaky for the first year. Hiruzen had his resignation letter already prepared inside of his desk, naming Shikaka Nara as his designated successor despite knowing that Shikaka was nowhere near ready to lead the village. The man didn't want the position and was not strong enough for it. But what other choice did Hiruzen have? His remaining loyal students were not an option for various reasons. They would probably run the village into desolation within a year. Kakashi was strong, but excuse Hiruzen if he didn't feel like leaving the village in the hands of a man whose mental issues could fill up an entire book. Guy was, yes, moving on. The only other candidate was Danzo, which was why Hiruzen clung to his chair with both hands. He didn't take Itaki into the Umbu to turn him against his clan. He took him there to gain the necessary experience. Hiruzen was subtly grooming the boy to be his successor. But, of course, Danzo just had to ruin it. The Uchiha clan couldn't be patient and waited for 5 more years. His elder advisors couldn't put a half-assed effort into the negotiation with the Uchiha clan. The Uchiha clan couldn't at least pretend that the negotiations were anything other than them stalling for time to gather their forces. It was all just a massive mess. Hiruzen was about to order the Umbu to execute the majority of the rebellious Uchiha ninja himself. And Danzo knew that, so he beat him to the punch. To this day, Hiruzen was baffled that Itaki went through with the fake orders. Clearly, he was giving the boy too much credit when he decided to groom him as his successor. Yes, people make mistakes, but that was something else. The orders were so retarded that Hiruzen had a hard time coming to terms that the 13-year-old boy actually decided to fulfill them. Hiruzen's solutions might have created a lot of tension between the Konoha's leadership and the clans, but at least the Uchiha clan would have had a future. The children, civilians, and loyal ninjas would have been spared. Maybe they would resent the village for it. maybe they would rebel later on. But killing an entire clan of their village because of what-ifs was a very slippery slope, and it showed why Hiruzen just could not, under any circumstances, allow Danzo anywhere near the Hokage position as long as he lived. Is there something I can do for you? Hiruzen flatly asked, knowing it was pointless to reprimand Danzo. You can't teach new tricks to an old dog without beating him within an inch of his life. Danzo had political armor safeguarding him against such a hands-on lecture. Uchiha Sasuke had met with Ren, the bomber. Danzo spoke. Because Ren didn't care for picking a last name, the village gave him a nickname, a designation that could be used to know which Ren they were talking about. Much to Ren's utter embarrassment, they picked the bomber because of his exploding seals. Honestly, Hiruzen knew that Ren regretted not picking a last name right there and then when he gleefully informed him of his new nickname. Hiruzen enjoyed that meeting a lot and, is there a problem? My ninjas are allowed to meet with each other, Danzo. The unlike yours went unsaid but was understood. They might be polite about it, but both of them knew that Danzo still had his forces safely tucked away for the rainy days, and if Hiruzen knew where their hideout was, he would personally wipe them out with extreme prejudice. Alas, no such luck. Hiruzen, don't you see it? Ren, the bomber, is a dangerous individual who needs to be corralled. He is clearly hiding something. If we let such a person approach the clans and garner influence. Danzo tried to share his concerns but Hiruzen was not having it. Yeah. You were just but hurt that you can't deal with him yourself, so you came to complain and whine to me like a little crybaby, hoping that I would go against my ninja for you. Get over yourself. He rolled his eyes and inwardly grinned in satisfaction when his old friend gritted his teeth. Hiruzen, are you really not going to do anything about such an obvious threat to Konoha? Who knows what he might be telling the Uchiha boy? We can't let him turn the boy against us. Danzo found Hiruzen's obtuse behavior frustrating, partly because, yes, he was afraid of trying to strike at Ren again. The last time he got his base bombed, many of his senior operatives died in the blast. Not that he could share that tidbit with Hiruzen. His root operative who tailed the Uchiha boy was also knocked unconscious before Sasuke met Ren, which made Danzo uneasy. If Ren could somehow find his secret hideout and strike at him there, wouldn't he know about his Sharingan collection? Or the real reason behind the Uchiha massacre? Danzo had no idea. The chance of that was slim, but it still existed, and it aided Danzo that he didn't have a way to deal with somebody who could know these secrets. His ranks were slowly reformed. Soon, a year at best, Danzo might get enough forces to throw at Ren to hopefully end him. But maybe if he could persuade Hiruzen to see a reason. Maybe. But I am Hokage, and what I say goes. I say that Ren is under my protection. He will be a good influence on the boy. Hiruzen raised his eyebrow at Danzo, daring him to say otherwise. Alas, it was just not to be. It was a long shot, but Hiruzen was clearly not going to see his point. But the meeting was not for nothing. Hearing what Hiruzen said, Danzo's eyes slightly widened as he understood something very vital. The old monkey was evaluating Ren. It made a disgusting amount of sense. Defeating the fourth Mizukage, who was a Jinchuriki, managing to run away from Itaka, Kisame, and Orochimaru, bringing an Uzumaki girl with several active bloodline abilities, training 2 daughters of the clan heads. All of that, and Ren was a ninja for not even 2 whole years yet. Danzo suddenly realized that Ren was not only his enemy, he was his mortal enemy who might snatch the position of Hokage from him. Hiruzen was measuring the boy for the position of his next successor. Maybe it wouldn't be relevant anytime soon. Ren needed time to grow in strength and reputation to be eligible for the position. But that fact just made it all the more important for Danzo to kill Ren as soon as possible. As you wish, Lord Hokage, he begrudgingly said, knowing there was nothing he could accomplish here. He turned on his heel and took his leave from the office without waiting to be dismissed. Hiruzen snorted at the audacity of this bitch. He couldn't wait for the day Danzo tripped and allowed him to get the necessary evidence that would make separating his head from his body justifiable. The very next moment after the door closed behind Danzo, an Umbu suddenly landed in front of Hiruzen's desk and knelt as he gave a report. Lord Hokage, Sasuke Uchiha had just been witnessed with bowl-cut hairstyle running across the village while wearing green spandex while shouting he shall be known as Sajigai Uchiha from now on. People are getting restless. One pink-haired girl had a mental breakdown. The man might have said it in a bland tone, but Hiruzen gave him a small glare because he just knew the Umbu was laughing like a loon in his head. Letting out an exasperated groan, Hiruzen mumbled under his nose. Good influence, my wrinkled ass. Chapter 74, ch 74, Free Day? What is so funny, Ino? Ren asked when Ino walked into the training ground, snickering and giggling to herself so much that she barely walked straight. It was an unusual sight for the usually composed blonde. Ino looked at Ren with a massive grin. I've met Sasuke sorry, I mean Sajigai Uchiha as I walked through the village. What? Ren asked confusedly, unaware of what was going on with Sasuke. He was far too preoccupied with experimenting to pay attention to what happened in the village yesterday and today. Ino walked toward him and giggled a bit at his confused expression. She leaned forward and pecked him on the lips before giving him an amused smile. Sasuke is running around the village in green spandex and sporting a dashing bowl-cut hairdo alongside 2 other weirdos screaming about the springtime of youth. Ren blinked. Already? That was quick. He expected Sasuke to take a few days to acclimate to Guy's antics. But apparently, there was much more to the boy than even Ren noticed. The Uchihas were adaptable. Who knew? Ino hummed in agreement, and her hands found their place, embracing Ren around his waist. She leaned her entire body on his chest, putting her head on his shoulder with a fond sigh and nuzzling her nose into his neck. You must teach me how to screw with somebody's head like that, Ren, she said with a small pleading whine. Please? Ren's lips twitched up when he felt her hand slide subtly toward his rear. He returned the gesture and gently but firmly took a handful of Ino's posterior too, making her giggle and slightly wiggle her butt into his touch. Honestly? No idea. I just winged it, he truthfully told the blonde, who pouted at that answer. I understand what you mean. Sakura was almost catatonic, wailing like a child in the middle of the street after seeing Sasuyugai. She mirthfully proclaimed. So, I tried to channel you and told her she might spend time with him if she joined his training. No idea if it worked because she only gained this mad gleam in her eyes before running off. Oh, no way. Ren's eyes widened. I wonder if we will have Sakugai join Sajigai in the future. Oh, Kakashi, you dick. You are so very welcome, he inwardly cackled. Now, I just need to find a way to persuade the Hokage to still put Sakura on Kakashi's team if she gets corrupted by the springtime of youth. Ren leaned slightly away from Ino and looked her in the eyes. Ino, you marvelously devious girl. I am so very proud of you, he loudly praised her. Eh? Ino tilted her head, but she still preened at the praise. Before she could react more, she was pleasantly surprised as Ren hungrily claimed her lips. When Hinata got to the training grounds, Ino and Ren's clothes were crumpled, and their hair was messy. Ren also sported several hickeys on the left side of his neck. Marking her territory, Ino called it. He could only exasperatedly roll his eyes at the blonde girl. He was a bit sullen that he couldn't do the same to her, but he didn't want to have Inoichi chasing him with a roll of newspaper throughout the whole village, screaming at him threats of copious mental harm. The man may look innocently harmless, but he was pretty much a male version of Anko, focused on mental pain rather than physical. There were stories of how the man managed to make jonins cry for their mommies. The thought that this man might be his future father-in-law made Ren shudder a bit, but he looked at the happily grinning Ino whose hands were still lustfully roaming his chest in wonder. She was so worth it. So, what are we going to do today? Hinata asked as she took off her jacket and approached the hugging duo, inwardly smirking when she noticed how Ren's eyes were subconsciously dragged to her cleavage. These days, she purposefully wore a loose-fitting long-sleeved lavender top with generous cleavage. She couldn't let the bimbo hog all his attention, now, could she? Let's just relax, Ino whined while shuffling her body from the center of Ren's chest more to the left side to make room for Hinata on his right side. She felt far too good to train today. We can get all grabby-grabby and kissy-kissy and have a great time together. She smiled, suddenly leaning forward and kissing Hinata's cheek while taking her hand into hers. Tell him, bitch. Sounds nice, bimbo. Hinata smiled back and rolled her eyes as she squeezed Ino's hand. They both expectantly turned toward Ren, who just sighed. He wanted their help with testing his new seals today, but having two sets of puppy dog eyes turned on him was surprisingly effective in making him cave in. You know what? All right, he helplessly shook his head. But tomorrow, you will return the favor and help me with my training for a change. Oh, do we get to beat you up? Ino excitedly asked and then yelped as Ren flicked her on the forehead. Nope. I'll need only your shadow clones. My new exploding seals are far too dangerous to use in a spar against real people. The village wanted to call him the bomber? Ren hated it. But sure. He decided to go with it. At first, it was just an idea. I hope he shuts up, or I am going to show him a bomber. I'll pull Bakuda on his ass. He thought as Sarutobi silently snickered when telling him his new nickname, but then it gave him a stop. He put more thought into it and realized it wasn't at all a bad idea. At first, he didn't think it would work out, but surprisingly, his seals managed to create the exotic exploding effects quite well for what he had in mind. He discovered an entire world of new and highly dangerous options spread in front of him in his mind that would make Deidara look like an inexperienced, amateurish try-hard child. It took him a few weeks, and now a few of his prototype seals were already in their finishing stages. After a few hundred of his clones heroically sacrificed their lives in the process of their creation by blowing themselves up in numerous ways. But these were the sacrifices Ren was willing to make. He was going to channel his inner Bakuda and show these scrubs what the real art was about. But for now, Ren's hand snaked around Hinata's waist, and he pulled her closer to him, kissing her in the process. He had two horny teenage girls clinging to him and he was going to enjoy their free day with them. Oh, by the way, my father is inviting you to our family dinner today. He was mumbling something about shovel talk. Ino suddenly spoke with an uncaring shrug and Ren's indulgent smile abruptly froze. There went his worry-free day. Far away from Konoha, two people wearing Akatsuki cloaks sat on a massive rock, enjoying a momentary break from their travels. Itaki Uchiha opened a report from his crows about Suzuki, a small smile donning his expression. This was the favorite part of his life. He wondered how his brother fared. After opening the file, Itake's Sharinan eyes first landed on a photo, and he subconsciously seared it into his mind forever. Only then did his mind register what it was looking at, and his expression scrunched in bewildered disgust before turning into a silent horror when he froze as he found out he could never unremember the horrifying sight. Kisame noticed that his partner was acting a bit weird and decided to take a look over his shoulder. A sharp, toothy grin spread on his face as he saw the photo of a boy very similar to his partner, wearing green spandex and sporting a bowl-cut hairdo as he stood with his hands on his hips in a very confident pose, smiling so wide it showed his teeth. And, did that sparkle effect on his teeth really happen? Kisame glanced at the small description text under the photo and almost cackled because, according to the file, the boy called himself Sajigai Uchiha now. Ha! I now understand why you let the twerp live, he hummed in amusement. He is a good comedic relief. Itake shakily put his hand on his chest and took a gasping breath as he leaned forward, making Kisame worry. Oi, Itake, you okay? Itake glanced at his partner, hiding a wince as he rasped out in a pained tone, just a minor heart attack. This was the day Sasuke Uchiha almost killed his brother for the first time, without even knowing it. Chapter 75, ch 75. A warm welcome. Ren awkwardly shifted in his place, uncomfortable in the formal gray kimono he wore, before he released a deep breath and finally knocked on the door he had stared at for the last 20 seconds. He instantly heard pitter-patter from behind the door and soon enough, they swung open and his breath hitched when Ino appeared, beaming at him. Ren had an intense sense of déjà vu. He remembered something similar happened when he visited her house for the first time. But this time, his breath wasn't taken away only because of her natural beauty but because the girl clearly dressed to make him horny. She wore a black dress reaching her knees. A very form-fitting black dress that showed all her curves exceptionally well. Even her generous cleavage left nothing to the imagination. It wasn't too big but neither was it too modest. It was made just right to attract the eyes and Ren had to admit it was succeeding as his gaze wandered lower than Ino's face for a moment. When he realized it and snapped his gaze back toward Ino's eyes, he noticed the mirth underneath all that clear blue wonder and couldn't help but slightly blush. The dress also fit well with her long blonde mane that fell around her shoulders and reached all the way to her lower back, imitating a waterfall of gold. Ren's fingers twitched. He had a great urge to touch her hair, pat her head, and play with her locks, but biting the inside of his cheek, he resisted and gave Ino a hopefully not too awkward smile and opened his mouth to greet her. He didn't even manage to say the first syllable before Ino flung herself at him and tightly hugged him, pressing her breasts into his chest. She pecked his cheek before she pulled away and excitedly spoke while Ren's hands rested on her hips. Finally, I was almost going crazy from how much my mom was teasing me. It was mortifying. Fair warning, Daddy didn't like my choice of dress so he is quite grumpy. But no worries, Mom has him under control. But you will have to impress him. He most likely has his suspicions and probably knows about us. Oh my god, I hope everything goes well. And Ren put his finger on her lips, shutting her up while inwardly snorting in amusement. The girl could be such a motor mouth when nervous. Clearly, she was just as jittery as him and that calmed his nerves somewhat. Calm down, Ino. We will get through this together, he told her, trying to return the favor and stop her nerves. Right. Ino took a deep breath in for a moment. They just lost themselves, staring at each other in silence while holding each other. But then Ino blinked and averted her eyes with a small blush and her lips spread into a slight grin. So, she trailed off. What do you think? She slightly wiggled her hips from side to side, making it obvious she was fishing for a compliment. Ren fondly chuckled, you look so beautiful I am afraid to kiss you and mess up your makeup. And Sage, her red lips were really enticing right about now. Ino let out a sweet awe and giggled, don't worry, I am not wearing any makeup. She gave him a mischievous look before her face shifted. It was still gorgeous but it now lacked the small touches of makeup that enhanced her beauty from she is gorgeous to I want to push her down right now levels. How? Ren asked, inwardly impressed. He would have detected a transformation technique so that was not it. This was something he didn't recognize. Ino was clearly holding out on him. I spent a lot of time in the sewers that is Naruto's mind. Ino huffed with an eye roll, that boy is hopeless. He didn't pay attention in class when the transformation technique was explained and somehow he screwed the technique up just right to get a proper physical transformation rather than just an illusion layered on top of his body. It would be impressive if it wasn't so irritating, and she was still mightily annoyed due to that revelation even now, several weeks later. The amount of luck Naruto had was staggering. It was infuriating to her, who had to sweat and bleed and put in an inhuman effort into every single advancement of hers. Here Naruto just comes and fucks around enough to invent a new jutsu. Of course, if Ren knew her thoughts, his expression would have turned very ugly because, from his point of view, Ino was just as big of a lucky cheater as Naruto. It was as if they were favored by the god of blondes or something. Maybe Hagoromo had a thing for blondes? Ren inwardly shivered at that thought. Hopefully, he was wrong because if not, he would have to find a way to reach his spiritual existence and give the old stalker a piece of his mind. He wasn't very happy with the possibility that some dead old sage was watching his girl shower from the great beyond. You are so going to teach me and Hinata that technique, Ren said, refocusing on things that mattered right now just as Ino's face shifted again and the makeup reappeared. Gladly, Ino happily responded, her tone laced with glee. She quite liked the image of her teaching something to Ren. And Hinata too, she guessed. She could hold it over Hyaga's head for the next few days. Now she only needed to practice her snobbed bitchy act in front of the mirror. Annoying Hinata was not going to be easy and she had to be in the top form if she wanted to manage it. Naruto has an unusually high yang concentration in his chakra. That's why he managed to do it. It's easy for him but I wouldn't be able to pull it off without a lot of training in forming yang-natured chakra. Ino informed Ren and nodded. He didn't know if Ino discovered Kurama in Naruto's mind. But considering the boy only had Kuwabai's yang half-sealed in him and the fox's chakra leaked into his system, it wasn't weird that his chakra was overwhelmingly yang-natured by default. It also explained why the boy struggled to form even a basic genjutsu. He would probably need Tsunade's level of chakra control before being able to pull off even a C-rank genjutsu, that or learn how to consciously form yin chakra. Then it is good that both I and Hinata can already form yang chakra, Ren said, and Ino pouted. Hinata already knows how to do that? She asked, miffed, and got a nod in return. It took her months in her mindscape to figure it out, and while in real life it was only a week, she still put so much effort and time into it. Drat. Ino's mood soured. I hope to see the bitch struggle with it a bit, she sullenly admitted. She liked Hinata like a sister she never had, but the girl frustrated her to no end. Over the past several months, Ino spent years worth of training in her mindscape, and she still could not beat the Hyaga bitch who had a fucking absolute no chakra allowed past this point defense. She could use at a moment's notice to nullify most elemental techniques while functioning as some sort of chakra shockwave attack in close range. The girl could also heal herself from almost any wound, ambushing her was impossible because of her special eyes, and she was nigh unbeatable in close-range combat because one tap was all it took for her to no-sell any opponent with a smug little humble smile on her face to show how effortless it is for her. And then there were her exploding senbons courtesy of their teacher, as if she wasn't overpowered enough already. Because PFFF, obviously, Hinata needed an option that would make her a total nightmare to fight even at range so damn much. Sometimes Ino wanted to punch her teacher in the face from the sheer frustration she felt whenever her mind strayed to the thoughts of sparring with Hinata. Ino didn't think it was so bad, wishing to see Hinata struggle for a bit. Just a little bit. Teensy lil bit. A small amount. Just enough to make her feel that the Hyaga is not always miles ahead of her. And then, suddenly, Ino was taken by surprise and her reverie was interrupted as Ren swooped her into his embrace and started kissing her. It took Ino a second for her mind to register what was going on, but then her hands plunged deeper behind his back. She opened her mouth and they started properly making out, her dark thoughts forgotten in favor of the pleasant sensation Ren's tongue was giving her. Heh, not so afraid to kiss me anymore? Ino asked slightly breathlessly when they pulled apart after a few dozen seconds. You said so yourself. No makeup means no worries, Ren replied, already leaning forward to capture her lips again. And capture her lips he did. Before Ino could even think of a reply, she found Ren's tongue exploring her mouth again, much to her delight. She was growing so hot and bothered, quivering from pleasure. All her worldly worries seemed so unimportant right now. Refusing to lose, Ino pushed back with her tongue and gripped the hair on the back of Ren's head with her fingers, gently yanking his head slightly to the side to give her better access while moaning and leaning into the kiss, uncaring that her dress was getting crumpled. A clearing of the throat resounded behind Ino and both she and Ren froze in the middle of their kiss, exchanging startled looks. Awkwardly, they pulled apart and Ren's right hand released Ino's left breast he was fondling while she wiped away the string of saliva connecting their lips before they turned to look at the person who interrupted them. Ino bashfully ducked her head while trying to fix her dress and Ren felt his flight or fight instincts flare as Inoichi Yamanaka was giving them a narrowed, unimpressed look. Loved this story? Hit subscribe and join Infinite Novel to be the first to catch new chapters. Chapter 76, CH 76. You planned this, the dinner is ready, Inoichi flatly stated before turning on his heel with a huff and sullenly stomping back into the house. Oh, Ren awkwardly thought, inwardly cursing at this blunder, not a great start to the evening. Both he and Ino looked at each other in incomprehension, expecting a much more explosive reaction from Inoichi. Why did you do that? Ino whispered as she chewed on her lower lip, her expression showing that she wasn't unhappy, just a bit flustered from being caught in the action by her father. Ren rubbed the back of his head, you looked frustrated. I even called out your name but you didn't respond. He shrugged. He didn't regret it, though. Fondly shaking her head with a small exasperated sigh, Ino took Ren's hand into hers and giggled, let's just go. She started dragging him into the house while entwining her fingers with his. When they entered the kitchen, they exchanged greetings and general pleasantries. Nariko, Ino's mother, was as always a sight for sore eyes. The most beautiful woman Ren had seen in both of his lives. Ino was on her way there but she didn't have that mature and experienced beauty that Nariko casually exuded just yet. It took Ren a bit of effort to prevent himself from staring as he handed Nariko the gift he prepared for Ino's parents, a particularly well-crafted Jake hairpin for Nariko and a bottle of quite expensive sake for Inoichi, both coming from the capital city. Having a transportation seal in there came with its perks. Then, he was seated behind a table with Ino next to him while her parents sat opposite them and the dinner started. It was quite nice. Good food. Inoichi brooding. A bit of talking. It was mostly Nariko asking unimportant questions and making small talk while Inoichi only occasionally added his input. But when they were done eating, Inoichi's demeanor suddenly shifted into seriousness and Ren knew that this was it. The time for some serious dad talk was imminent. Ino noticed it too and her hand gripped Ren's knee in silent support just as Inoichi spoke. When I hired you to train my daughter, he stared at Ren, I expected you to make her ready for the graduation exam. But instead, you are training her to become a strong and effective kunoichi. For that, you have my gratitude. Both as the head of the Yamanaka clan and as her father. Seeing how startled his words made Inoichi threw her a small reassuring smile. You are good at hiding it, princess. but you tend to relax your guard at home and I am one of Konoha's best interrogation officers. Getting information from context clues and piecing it into one conclusion is what I do for a living. There is nothing to thank me for. Ren nodded in understanding. He expected Inoichi to figure it out sooner or later. I have a vested interest in her continued existence. As much as he derided the ninja way, their mindset and outlook on the world, they were not stupid and they were good at what they were doing. In fact, Ren was surprised that Ino managed to last this long. Or maybe Inoichi just didn't see a reason to confront them sooner. His daughter was getting stronger as a kunoichi, which raised her chances of survival in their profession. There was probably no reason to intervene from the man's point of view. Now, I know you are sleeping with my daughter. Inoichi instantly decided to get to the heart of the matter while giving Ren a displeased frown, only for Ino to sputter in her seat. We are not sleeping together, she indignantly exclaimed, causing Inoichi to give her a small, meaningful look. Ino, dear, I am not blind or deaf, he informed her with an understanding smile. A stark contrast to the mighty frown he was giving Ren just a second ago. It only served to make Ino more indignant and Noriko decided to bring some levity to the discussion. Maybe don't shout your teacher's name out loud for the entire house to hear the next time you are masturbating, sweetie? She said with an amused smile while looking at Ino, who instantly flushed from embarrassment, and Ren couldn't help but give his blonde student a deadpan you can't be serious look with a raised eyebrow. He knew for a fact she had an entire stack of privacy seals, free to use as she wished. After all, he gave them to her. She really isn't very subtle, is she? Ren flatly asked Noriko, who lightly but mirthfully shook her head. No, not at all. She still has some growing up to do as a kunoichi. Being strong is not all there is to it. Even Inoichi found Ino's embarrassment endearing and his lips twitched in amusement. With a big pout, Ino decided to double down and strongly but sullenly insisted, we are not sleeping together. It made Inoichi frown. Either Ino was lying to his face or he was missing something. He opened his mouth to respond, but Ren spoke first. She is speaking the truth. We might be dating but no hanky-panky is occurring. He decided that the cat was out of the bag, so they might as well fess up. Besides, Ino's father looked way too calm and collected. Sure, there was this gloom and doom sensation around him, but he seemed to be in a state of resigned acceptance rather than open hostility when it came to their relationship. Ren expected way more threats and angry shouting. So far, this dinner was going fabulously. Nobody was stabbed and nobody was bleeding out on the floor. In ninja terms, they got along exceedingly well. Inoichi looked from Ino to Ren and back several times, looking for any hint of dishonesty with narrowed eyes, but after a while, the man leaned back on his chair with a surprised blink that's hard to believe. I know my daughter and I always thought she would jump into sex headfirst. She takes after me in that regard, Noriko playfully added, putting her hand on Inoichi's forearm. Mom! Ino whined, but her smile betrayed that she wasn't as unhappy about it as she tried to sound. Yes. I still remember you giving her the talk. Inoichi chuckled and Ino let out a mortified groan, but it didn't stop Noriko from grinning and explaining as she looked at Ren. Ino instantly asked me about all the positions she could have sex in. She playfully rolled her eyes. I am going to ask Suzuki-kun which one he likes the best, she said. Noriko huffed and Ren snorted, only to get a weak kick to his shin, courtesy of Ino, who was now glaring at her mother. And she did ask the poor boy. Right in the middle of the street when we met him during one of our grocery runs. Noriko giggled and Ino tried to hide her face behind her hands, letting out a soundless whimper. The poor boy looked so lost on the road of life in that moment. They were 11. Could you stop embarrassing me, Mom? Ino desperately asked with a voice full of pleading, while Inoichi looked very uncomfortable but at the same time, highly amused with the topic. Noriko just rolled her eyes and gave Inoichi a soft poke with her elbow. Go on. You wanted to say something, didn't you? Must I? His amusement instantly deflated as he muttered under his nose. But Noriko just said a resounding yes, ending his protests in the cradle. Ha! Fine. Inoichi gave Ren a conflicted look before sighing once more. Look, I am not against your relationship. It seemed almost physically painful for him to admit it. He then looked at Ino. When I was your age, my father put me in an arranged marriage. I rebelled against his decision because I fell in love with your mother. Ino became surprised as she intently listened. She heard the story of how her parents met. She knew her mother wasn't receptive to her father's courting for a while. It took him a lot of effort to win her over. That was partly why she was so determined to win Suzuki's heart in the past. It reminded her of her parents' situation. She could now see that she kinda wanted to subconsciously emulate it, but she had never heard anything about arranged marriages. Clearly, she was given a heavily recon version of the story previously. It took a lot of effort and arguments, a lot of anger, to resolve that situation, and I was extremely lucky that my father was not too stubborn to insist on getting his way no matter what. Inoichi continued, I swore to myself that I would never do that to my children. He gave Ino a serious look. It's why I never complained about your crush on the Uchiha boy despite knowing he is mentally unstable and very much traumatized. If you had ever brought him home to introduce him as your boyfriend, we would have had a problem. Ugh, Ino had no idea what to say to that. Well, she could understand and admit these things now, in hindsight. But back then? She would have probably angrily argued for her choices. There. That wasn't even hard, was it? Noriko smiled and looked at Ren. You have our permission to pursue your relationship with our daughter. Thank you. Ren returned her smile, feeling immense relief flood him. As a clan kunoichi, Ino was basically the property of her clan. If her father told her their relationship was forbidden, Ino would most likely rebel just like her father. She did inherit that from him, but that does not mean it wouldn't make things hard for her. She clearly loved her parents and Ren would feel bad if their relationship suffered because he entered their lives. That wasn't the effect he wanted to have on Ino's life. So, the fact that her parents were okay with them lifted a massive burden off his shoulders. Sadly, he knew that Hinata's situation would not turn out this well, not even in his wildest dreams. Wait, Hinata. Ren realized that mentioning her right now would probably be for the best. Sure, it took a lot of effort and pushing through unease on his part. He knew this could blow up spectacularly in his face, but it was still better than if they found out on their own later down the line. He exchanged looks with Ino, his throat suddenly dry. I am also dating my other student, Hinata. He said it in one breath, knowing how it sounded. Honestly, he wanted to just burrow himself into the earth and never come back again. Why did he accept their advances again? Damn, his hormones and emotions. We know, Inoichi bluntly said, surprising Ren with an unhappy snort. I saw you walk with your students through the village a week ago, Ren. Your posture, the way you three interacted, your body language. It was pretty obvious. That's why we are having this dinner. It gave me the impression that you were having sex with both girls, but they clearly knew about each other. Actually, Inoichi first complained about it to Nariko and was quite furious, but his wife calmed him down and presented the situation from a different angle. Hence why this evening was not full of screaming and fighting with Kunao. She had a point. Ren was good for their daughter, and Ino obviously loved him. Hinata also came up a lot when Ino talked about her training. It was clear to Inoichi that Ino was more than fond of the Hyuga girl despite constantly complaining about her. So, Inoichi, despite wanting to do fucky-wucky with Ren's mind, held himself back and gave the boy a chance. Of course, he investigated a lot before inviting Ren over. He probably knew more about the subtleties of their relationship than even Ren consciously admitted to himself. As a father, Inoichi knew that his darling daughter would one day bring home a boy. And, her choice, wasn't a disaster. There. He said it. That doesn't mean he is going to be happy about it. He took his glass of water and started sullenly drinking, wishing it was sake. The only issue I have, Nariko started, making Ren straighten up, is that you haven't had sex with the girls yet, she said, and Inoichi almost spat the water and started coughing as it went down the wrong pipe. He gave his wife a wide-eyed look in between the coughs and he couldn't even react as he was too preoccupied with regaining his breath. This wasn't what they agreed on or talked about before the dinner. But Nariko ignored Inoichi's distress and kept staring at Ren, who started to feel uncomfortable and out of his depth. I have my Rizo-Ino told me about your reservations. Nariko blandly interrupted him, but according to Konoha's law, Ino and Hinata, as academy students, are categorized as civilians in training. Therefore, they became adults on their 15th birthday. Clans might not acknowledge it, but that's their status according to the law. The ninja adulthood is nothing but tradition at this point. It had its use before the academy reforms, but now it is just something to celebrate. But it isn't that big of a deal. According to my daughter, your biggest hang-up is that she is a minor. Well, she is not. Problem solved. The woman explained, and Ren wanted to retort so much but he couldn't think of anything to say back to that. Then again, I don't think that's your problem. From what she shared and from what I've seen today, you constructed these weird moral concepts in your mind when it comes to the relationship with my daughter and you were trying to follow them. Ren helplessly nodded because there was nothing he could do. The woman was quite close. He didn't construct them. He just had them from his previous life. And more than once did he think he was being stupid, and that he was just hurting his girls with it. But the fact that they were considered minors by law was what held him back. And now, suddenly, Ren realized that despite the woman's approachable and inviting appearance, she was a former kunoichi specializing in information gathering and probably learned her fair share of psychology know-how living with Yamanakas. Feeling uncomfortable, he turned toward Ino and childishly complained, Ino, your mother is bullying me with logic. Yes, she tends to do that. Ino knowingly smirked at him, giving him a pause when he didn't get the support he expected. Both Inoichi and Ren frowned and looked at Nariko and Ino. And while Ren found the situation weird enough to notice that something was off, Inoichi came to a conclusion almost instantly. You two planned this, he exclaimed in surprise, causing Ino to share a look with Nariko, who shrugged. Yes. I wanted to have a better picture of my daughter's relationship before we met her boyfriend, so I confronted her. During our talk, she complained that Ren is too stubborn to be seduced into bed. I decided to help the poor girl pull her partner's head out of his ass so she could get laid, Nariko said with an innocent "what can you do" smile, and Inoichi stared at his wife, completely speechless. He was not alone. Ren also stared at Ino, having no idea how to react either. So, here is how this will go. Nariko turned back to Ren, giving him a very meaningful look, and her playful demeanor instantly shifted into something way sharper and demanding as she slowly spoke. You and Ino will go to her room. You will secure it with a privacy seal. Inoichi tried to interrupt his wife with distress apparent in his voice, but she just glanced at him. Shush. His mouth closed as he reeled back with bewilderment written in his expression, and the woman continued as if nothing happened. And then you will take my daughter's virginity in her bed. It is what she deeply desires. You will make her first night unforgettable, and you will strive to make her orgasm at least once. My daughter might act all brash and exuberant, but she will need you to take the lead in the bedroom, Nariko ordered, much to the increasing embarrassment of her daughter. Inoichi too gulped and subtly averted his gaze, his cheeks flushing a bit. Ren suddenly had an inkling of why Nariko thought Ino would be timid in the bed. Tomorrow, you will take the Hyuga girl on a date. Then, you will take her to your bedroom and once again, you will make her night unforgettable. Hyugas might look reserved, but once they get going, they can be very wild in private when nobody sees them. So, I doubt you will have many problems with the Hyuga girl. Do you understand? If you have any protests against that, say it now so I can explain to you why you are being a dumbass. Ren tried his best not to gape at the woman. He opened his mouth, closing it a second later. What was he supposed to say to that? Damn, my mom is a badass. Ino loudly whispered, looking outwardly very excited. But when Ren looked at her, he realized that underneath that mask of exuberance, she was worried that he would still reject her. Nariko kind of forced his hand here, but that was fine. Yes, he was indeed being a dumbass, and he did need somebody to tell him off. As much as he disliked feeling like a chastised little boy. Taking a deep breath, Ren looked Ino in the eyes, and with a wry smile he took her hand. I'd like to stop being a dumbass, and according to your mother, I'll need the location of your room for that. So, lead the way? Yes, Ino shouted, giving Ren a quick but tight hug. She pulled away sooner than Ren could actually hug her back and threw a grateful look her mother's way. Thanks, Mom. And before Ren knew it, he was being dragged through Ino's house, up the stairs. Before Ino pulled him into her room, Ren only heard a faint Inoichi's voice coming from the kitchen. But this was not how this evening was supposed to go. Continuation of the chapter with explicit scenes available on Patreon, coming soon. Due to YouTube's policies, this segment has been edited. The full content will be available on our Patreon once ready. Stay tuned for updates. In the meantime, check the first pinned comment for more details. Ino dragged Ren by the hand to her room and closed the door behind them before placing a privacy seal. As it activated, the outside world faded away, leaving only the two of them in that intimate space. She turned to Ren, her eyes gleaming with a mix of longing and determination. Without a word, she pulled him close, and their lips met in a passionate kiss, filled with unspoken promises. Ren responded instantly, wrapping his arms around her as the heat between them grew. Clothes fell to the floor, forgotten, and the room filled with breathless whispers and knowing laughter. Ino guided his hands with confidence, and Ren followed, learning every curve, every sigh that escaped her lips. I don't want this to ever end, she murmured against his skin, burning under his touch. It won't, he replied, sealing that promise with another kiss. Hours melted away in a whirlwind of caresses and tender words until, exhausted but happy, they curled together under the sheets, feeling as if the world could wait. Full scene available on Patreon, coming soon. Check the first comment. Alternative link available while we prepare Patreon. You can read the original material there. Yes, I could definitely get used to this, Ino thought, clutching the sheets as she savored every second. Chapter 77, ch 77, Crouching Hinata, Hidden Hyuga, Activate Your Byakugan. Hayashi Hyuga barked out an order at Hinata, who stood in a dojo opposite her younger sister, while some of the Hyuga elders sat a bit further away, trying to look as if they were important. But Hinata could easily see the mocking glint in their eyes, the way they held themselves back from turning up their noses at her. Truly, if it was the old her, she would have been near tears by now. She was dragged out of bed for this farce, at 6 in the morning. Simply dreadful. To think that the esteemed geriatric elders of the all-important Hyuga clan woke up this early in the morning and left their fluffy beds just to come and witness how she lost to her younger sister. She could almost feel the familial love and support. It wasn't as if they were here to cheer her up or something. They most likely did not expect her to have a chance at winning. They just came to see her humiliated. She had fought her sister several dozens of times and she had never come even close to winning. Not once. And she knew that these sparring matches were something the elders insisted on. They knew she did not want to fight her sister. They knew she could and would showcase more of her strength against somebody who wasn't her younger sister. But they always said, if you can't defeat even your younger sister, then fighting somebody else from the clan who trained for much longer would be a waste of time. Hinata would be astonished at their sheer pettiness if it wasn't so pathetic. The highlight of their day was bullying a teenage girl. That was just sad. No, I'll fight like this. Hinata refused with a slight slouch in her posture, something that must drive those perfectionist elders sparse. How dare she not show the perfect Hyuga grace when she is about to get beaten up, right? She let out a small tired sigh and turned her half-lidded eyes to her sister, who was frowning at her. Honestly, Hinata was still half daydreaming about Ren's cuddles, his kisses, and his big er. Let's just say that they interrupted a nice and steamy dream when they woke her up, all wet and bothered. The jerks. Hinata, take the fight seriously and activate the Byakugan, Hayashi ordered, completely nonplussed. Hinata could see that he was angry from how the skin around his eyes tightened even though his face was completely blank. Despite being without her fabled eyes activated, she could still use the standard observation to figure things out. When she was a kid, she was so afraid of this man, so afraid to disappoint him. She wanted him to say a simple "I am proud of you" more than anything. Now, she couldn't bring herself to care anymore. And no, Ino was wrong. She did not have daddy issues. Ren told her that her father cared for her, and she could understand that logically. He was covering for her and his actions did prevent her from being sealed with the cursed seal, but she just couldn't feel the love. Ren gave her more parental love than her own father while desiring to fuck her. Oh, she knew. She was a Hyaga. She had seen how aroused she made him right from the start. At first, it was extremely awkward for her and she was happy that he hadn't shown his attraction to her outwardly during their early days. But now, it made her feel important. Made her feel that somebody wanted her and cared for her. The fact that she could have been dreaming about having a steamy hanky-panky time with Ren right now made her even grumpier. Just start the fight already. She mumbled loudly enough for the ninjas in the room to hear. It didn't win her any allies and some of the elders in the room were now openly frowning. Wow. Did she manage to get a reaction out of them other than look as if they were smelling shit? Score! Hinata inwardly whined in imitation of Ino's voice when she saw the disappointed looks they were throwing at her. But Hanabi's angry look was what actually hit her. Right there. In the heart. She gave her sister an apologetic smile but Hanabi's glare did not lessen. Geez. Her sister was getting her panties in a twist for no reason. It wasn't as if she could use her eyes. She didn't want to show her family that her Byakugan no longer needed her veins to bulge out. They would have questioned she didn't feel like answering. Worse yet, the second she activated Byakugan, her clansmen would know, bulging veins or not. Their Byakugan would notice the increased concentration of chakra around her eyes. They would recognize it for what it is despite the lack of bulging veins. So, Hinata was kinda stuck and could not cheat. She really didn't think this one through when considering all the UPS and downs of operating on the chakra pathways around her eyes. This detail was not something that came to her mind. Alas, now she could only suck it up. Unfortunately, her father looked like he would insist until she obeyed him, which was frustrating. Hayashi, start the fight. It does not matter if the girl refuses to use her eyes. It's not like she would have a chance at victory with them. A voice resounded amidst the elders and Hinata inwardly cheered. Yay! Grandfather comes to the rescue. Thank you, you magnificent piece of shit. Hinata thought in relief, channeling her inner Ino. She knew the man didn't say it to help her. In fact, he wanted her humiliated. But, small mercies and all that. Maybe she finally understands her place. Her grandfather finished speaking and Hinata's lips twitched. Well, fuck you too. She dryly added in her mind as some of the elders agreed while others disagreed as if their opinion actually mattered to her. She wondered what Ino and Ren were doing right now. Probably still blissfully sleeping. Just for that, she was going to hit Ino extra hard during their training today. As a good sister in training, she should share her suffering, should she not? Of course, she would heal her afterward and even give her a massage as an apology because she would feel bad. Fine. Are you two ready? Hayashi reluctantly asked, giving both Hinata and Hanabi a glance. When they both nodded and got into a fighting stance, he pursed his lips for a moment before shaking his head, then begin. And Hanabi instantly sprang forth, intending to hit Hinata in the stomach with her palms. Hinata inwardly smiled. It was so adorable. Her sister won several previous spars with this move and probably thought to use it as an opening move in hopes of instantly ending the spar. Hinata just stepped to the side at the last moment, evading the palms. She was destined to lose this fight, but she would lose on her own terms. Of course, Hanabi was experienced enough that Hinata's dodge didn't shock her. She simply flowed into another form and started relentlessly striking at Hinata with wild abandon. She sent several finger jabs at Hinata's chest area and Hinata either blocked or redirected them, letting one pass and hit a tenketsu on her left shoulder. Her outward wince only motivated Hanabi to try harder and she sent a palm strike at Hinata's abdomen again, only for Hinata to catch her arms in a vice grip, and before Hanabi could react, Hinata spun on her heel before releasing her sister, throwing her away. But as expected, it didn't do much. Hanabi flipped midair before landing on her feet like a cat, her expression severe but her eyes now held an excited glint. A small smile wanted to emerge on Hinata's lips and she had to suppress it as she lowered herself into a defensive form. Their fight continued as they traded blows. Hinata would always miss or get blocked. Hanabi would have to properly work to land a hit but in the end, Hinata allowed her to score before using it to throw her away. 10 minutes passed like this. Usually, Hinata had always lost by now. But today, she was having fun. She did for her sister what Ren did for her, subtly showing her the openings in her fighting style during the fight. Only Hinata also tried to make it seem as if she was desperately hanging on in the fight. Her sister learned fast and by the 15-minute mark, she stopped giving Hinata the easy situations where she could just grab her arms and throw her away. They still continued to trade blows like a whirlwind under the no longer amused gazes of the elders but at least their father looked somewhat relieved under his official resting bitch face. Hinata inwardly chuckled. Yes. That was the whole, excuse her, fucking point. With this showing, he would have an easier time advocating for giving her a chance to prove herself, which was the excuse he used to prevent her branding. She chanced to glance at her grandfather and the man looked as if somebody served him a plate of shit for breakfast. Hinata resisted the urge to burst into giggles and dash. Ow. Hanabi landed a proper jab and blocked a tenketsu in her stomach because she was distracted. She really wasn't used to fighting without her Byakugan, huh? That was a potential weakness and Hinata decided to ask Ren for some sparring where she wouldn't use her bloodline. 20 minutes into the fight, Hanabi started breathing hard from the high-speed close contact battle between them so Hinata also pretended to match her sister's breathing rhythm. But really? This was less intense than her everyday warm-up exercises during her training with Ren. She still had all of her weight seals active and hidden on her body and thanked the sage that Byakugan could not see them. It pained her to admit, but Hanabi was slow. Way too slow. With tiredness came sloppiness, and Hinata inwardly frowned as her sister gave her several more unintended openings than was healthy for her continued existence in the fight. Suddenly, Hinata's arm shot forward, her chakra-laced fingers almost grazing Hanabi's cheek and missing it only by an inch. Hinata tried to make it look as if she aimed for the shoulders but messed up and almost hit her sister's cheek with a lucky shot. The younger girl yelped as her eyes widened in fright and alarm, but on instinct, she jumped away, hopefully realizing how sloppy her form became. For the next 5 minutes, Hanabi was having a hard time, barely catching her breath while still trying to match her sister blow for blow. Hinata was also panting and outwardly looking dead on her feet from exhaustion. And hell, she didn't need to act much. The painful winces were half real. Her body was stinging somewhat fiercely from the blows she allowed Hanabi to land. 72 of her tenketsu were blocked, throbbing with dull pain. She was almost regretting letting her sister have these free hits, but she had an image to portray to the elders. Their fighting got even sloppier and the elders were properly scowling and frowning now, highly displeased that Hinata was almost outlasting their little genius. But, enough was enough. Showing this much should make it much easier for her father, and it wasn't like Hinata exposed anything more than the fact she could keep up and was much faster than before. She has only shown enough to prove that putting her under Ren's tutelage was having a very positive effect, but she was still losing handily to Hanabi. Well, kind of? Some of the elders would probably suspect that she is holding back, but as long as they don't know by how much, all would be well. At best, they will think she is genin-level material now with what she has shown, if only because of their own arrogance. Hinata's forearm blocked Hanabi's palm strike, causing her to slide back on the ground, but Hanabi did not press her offensive because she was almost swaying on her feet, looking like she would keel over any moment. Hinata let herself flop on her posterior, letting out a pained groan. "I surrender," she said out loud with a frustrated tone. "I can't continue. Many of my tenketsu are blocked and I didn't hit Hanabi even once." The bland stare her father gave her after hearing her was amusing. With how she managed to throw Hanabi a few times during their spar, a half-blind man could tell that she could have scored a proper hit on her sister. She just decided not to. "Are you sure?" Hayashi asked, very aware of the fact that if Hinata fought for just a half-minute longer, Hanabi would lose due to exhaustion. He didn't know how to feel about this. On one hand, Hinata got so much better. On the other hand, the fact she had almost won without landing even one blow or using her Byakugan was not lost on anybody in the room. It was pure disrespect. To her sister. To him. To the elders. And to their clan traditions. He should tan her hide for it. But, he could definitely use it to his advantage in clan politics. "Yes. My sister won this match." Hinata nodded, wiping a bit of sweat from her forehead and making Hayashi inwardly wryly smile. Hyagas were observant. Hinata was barely sweating, no matter how much she pretended to breathe hard and look as if death warmed her over. Hanabi, however, was drenched from head to toe in sweat. Yet another thing the elders definitely did not miss, if their scowls were any indication. They really did not want Hinata to take the position of heiress, and Hayashi could already see them trying to force him to enter tutoring under Ren and get her trained by somebody from the clan. For the clan, they will no doubt call it. But just this one time, he refused to bow to their future demands. Hell, maybe he would hire Ren to teach his younger daughter once she got older if this was the result. He was truly proud of Hinata. "I see," he said with a straight face and nodded in acknowledgement. "Then, Hanabi is the winner. You need to train harder, Hinata." He gave her a reproachful look, trying to motivate her. Hinata released a weary sigh and stood up, giving her father an expectant half-lidded tired stare. "I am proud of you, daughter. You did well." "No, nothing, not even a little." "Come on, father. Your daughter visibly improved. Give me something," she inwardly grumbled. "You are dismissed," Hayashi evenly said before standing up and slowly walking out of the dojo under the flat stare of his eldest daughter. "Right. Fuck you too," Hinata dryly thought. "Silly me hoping for more." Chapter 78 ch 78 Behold. Ren the. With the morning surprise match against her sister done, Hinata had her breakfast and went to the training ground 41 to meet Ren and Ino as she thanked the sage it was Saturday. When she arrived at their clearing, it was already 10 in the morning and she was surprised that nobody was there yet. Ren usually had at least some clones over here by this time, messing around, as he called it, with seals. Realizing she was on her own for now, Hinata plucked a leaf from a nearby tree and started converting her chakra into a lightning-natured one. The hand holding the leaf instantly shone bright blue and electrical chirping resounded through the clearing as lightning currents started dancing around Hinata's palm, covering it alongside the leaf. Ren did not know that Chidori and Kakashi was not using it in the village, so Hinata had no frame of reference other than to concentrate lightning chakra in your palm. By now, she lost count of how many times she zapped or burned herself with her own lightning chakra. Fortunately, as a medic ninja, she could fix her injuries in a short order. Staring into the blinding lightning current with her eyes closed and her Byakugan active, Hinata's mind strayed and she idly wondered why Ren asked her if chakra blinded her eyes. It was such a silly notion. Her human eyes? The biological part? Yes, they could get blinded. But Hyagas could easily fight with their eyes closed and still see. The world they perceived through Byakugan was not based on visible light but on chakra, and it didn't matter how intense the chakra was. It would not blind them. If it did, then any sufficiently strong ninja releasing their chakra would have been blinding for them. How would they function as ninjas then? For some reason, Ren was very disappointed about that, but then he got this determined expression. Hinata wondered if it had something to do with his new experimental seals he wanted to show them today. Honestly, she was excited but also quite apprehensive about the fact that her teacher might be making an anti-Byakugan seal. She started feeding the technique more and more chakra, trying to keep the lightning chakra more concentrated without harming the leaf. Learning how to channel the chakra in order to keep her hand from being harmed was hard, but channeling the chakra without destroying the leaf? Hinata could feel the beads of sweat rolling down her temple. It was distracting. The leaf suddenly caught on fire due to the intensity of lightning when Hinata lost control for a split second. She instantly smoothed the fire with her chakra and waved her hand in the air to cool it off as she sighed. Her goal was to be able to touch other people and make harming them optional for her while the lightning chakra ran through her hands. It was an insane goal. The level of control necessary. Hinata couldn't really imagine it. The lightning chakra was naturally destructive and volatile. But when she said her goal was to reinvent the fabled Chidori, Ren told her she should aim higher before dropping this insane suggestion on her. Shoot high so even if you fail, you get much further than the average scrubs, was exactly what Ren told her. It was obvious he didn't expect her to succeed anytime soon, to be honest. Hinata knew that much. Her teacher loved to teach through failure. Even if she failed the exercise, by the time she got fed up with it enough to give up, her comprehension and control of lightning release were going to be top-notch by nowadays ninja standards anyway. But she had her pride and was stubborn. So, she plucked another leaf from a tree and huffed, only to stop in her tracks as Ino and Ren finally entered the range of her Byakugan. She smiled but didn't pay them much attention just yet. Her range was 2 kilometers right now and they were not exactly in a hurry. Hinata had a few minutes before they arrived, so she started the exercise again. It was 5 minutes later and after 2 more failures when Hinata focused her attention on Ino and Ren just as they were entering the clearing. Her lips spread into a happy smile with a greeting on her tongue when she noticed one small detail that instantly wiped her joyful mood, and her expression darkened as a heavy frown surfaced on her face. Hinata felt as if somebody dunked a bucket of cold water on her as she noticed that Ino's insides had remnants of male sperm, and there was only one man Ino would let touch her. Hinata couldn't help the feeling of soul-crushing disappointment and searing jealousy that popped into her mind, full of newfound self-pity mixing with anger. Oh, she understood. They had an arrangement. But that didn't make her feel hurt that Ino sunk her claws into Ren first. But she took a deep breath, outwardly pretending that she didn't want to curl up in a ball, and let out a sad whimper. She crossed her arms under her chest and put on a displeased expression. When Ino and Ren finally arrived near her, she gave them an intense but dry look. "You had sex." She spoke in a slightly accusing tone, trying to not sound hurt. But of course, Ino was over the moon and high on happy natural chemicals, so her brain-to-mouth filter was malfunctioning more than usual. "Yes. We had a great night. And shower. And morning. And another shower." Ino giddily boasted, almost preening in front of Hinata, took a deep calming breath. This girl, she felt the sudden urge to punt her across the village. By then Ren separated from Ino and much to Hinata's surprise he hugged her and asked in a concerned whisper, "Are you alright?" Hinata felt conflicted as she melted into the embrace. "I am jealous," she sullenly admitted. Ren was already opening his mouth to reassure her when Ino grinned and didn't read the mood, deciding to tease Hinata like usual. "Ah, is the virgin Hyuga jelly that my world was rocked first? How see you oi." She had to quickly duck under the senbon that almost embedded itself into her forehead. Hinata was already summoning another senbon from her storage seal, and Ren thanked the sage she wasn't mad enough to put explosion seals on them before throwing them. He quickly scrambled to put his hand on Hinata's, preventing her from actually killing Ino on accident, as he also gave the blonde girl a meaningful look. "I was just joking. No need to get violent." Ino, still in a crouch, frowned. The cheerful happy-go-lucky levity was gone from her tone as she realized it was not appreciated. Ren sighed before releasing Hinata's hand and his fingers relocated to her jaw. He gently made her turn her head toward him and looked her in the eyes, loving how her gaze softened. "What about having dinner with me today?" he asked. "I will cook." Hinata hesitated for a moment, but when she saw with her Byakugan how Ino gave her double thumbs UPS from behind Ren, she finally showed a small relieved smile. "Still, just the two of us?" she asked. Ino had her first time alone with Ren, and Hinata was smart enough to understand where this was going, and she would be pissed if she had to share her first time with Ino. After that? Sure. She liked Ino well enough, but she wanted to be given at least as much respect as Ino. "Just the two of us," Ren agreed, causing relief to flood Hinata. You can even stay the night? Maybe? If you want?" Honestly, as he was asking her out, he felt nervous and awkward. This whole asking a second girl out in front of his first girl he had just spent the entire morning dicking down was far more nerve-wracking than it appeared in stories. Fortunately, they had talked about their relationship like proper adults long ago. They accepted its nature. And while Hinata most likely didn't like that Ino had sex with him first, his Hyuga cinnamon roll was usually a non-violent person. Her displeasure was limited to huffing and pouting, and raining down senbons. "Small stuff, really. Yes. I'd love that. I can send home a clone so I won't be missed." Hinata eagerly agreed, her entire expression lighting up like a Christmas tree due to her newfound excitement. Wryly smiling, Ren kissed her on her forehead before muttering only for her to hear, "That's my girl." Hinata blushed a bit, but she also grinned a bit, and Ren chuckled as he pulled away from her and clapped his hands. Okay, today we are going to spar. I have a few new seals I want to try, and I will need your shadow clones as assistants. Release the gravity seals and make 3 of your clones, please. He'd love to keep hugging Hinata, maybe even get handsy, but if they started, then the test would be postponed to another day, and Ren didn't want that. The girls almost instantly switched from casual mode to professional one as smoke briefly covered the clearing around them, and when it dissipated, 3 more Inos and 3 more Hinatas stood in front of Ren, ready for orders. Rolling his eyes, Ren unsealed a kunao. Ino, no, he said, and looked the original Ino in the eyes to show how serious he was. He then instantly inscribed a seal onto the kunao with his chakra and threw it at 3 further away from them. The second the kunao hit it, the seal on it destabilized, and the tree trunk in a 1-meter spherical radius around the kunao instantly turned into salt. Only the upper branches of the crown were left intact and started falling to the ground with a resounding crash while creaking as gravity reasserted itself. They were swiftly followed by the waterfall of newly made salt as it rained onto the ground and into the small bowl-shaped crater full of white underneath it, because even the ground in the area of effect was turned into salt. Switch back with your clone. I am not fighting with the real you using these. It's too dangerous, Ren told Ino, who stood inconspicuously among her clones while one of her clones now stood next to Hinata. Seeing the tree turn into salt, Ino paled a bit and obediently swapped with her clone again, deciding it would be safer not to try and sneak into this particular spar. Yeah, you might have a point, she shakily admitted, her gaze transfixed at the remains of the tree. She understood why he wanted to fight only their clones now. Fire jutsu could burn you, lightning jutsu could zap you, earth could bury you alive, but being turned into salt? Instantly? There was no way to heal that. There would be nothing left for Hinata to heal. One missed dodge during a spar and that was that. Game over. Ino shivered, and even the original Hinata looked a bit dismayed, coming to the same conclusion. All of her medical training would amount to nothing in front of that attack. But clones didn't have such high self-preservation instincts, so one of Hinata's clones chuckled. Behold, Ren the salty ninja, she joked, getting an offended look from Ren in return. As if the bomber was not bad enough. He really hoped that nickname would not catch on. That clone needed to be instantly eliminated and prevented from spreading its evil. Unfortunately, he missed the momentary mischievous glint in Ino's eyes before she hit it. Chapter 79, CH 79, Epically Exotic Exploding Effects 1. After explaining the rules of engagement to the clones, they fanned out, encircling him as they waited for him to start the match. Ren couldn't fault them for it. Fairness had no place in a ninja fight. That said, Ren smirked, and after saying a short, begin, he disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing that he was just a clone. The original Ino and her clones gawked at the dissipating smoke in utter bewilderment as they wondered when he managed to swap himself for a clone. She had been watching him like a hawk ever since they left her parents' house. As for the Hinata clones, they cursed and instantly started looking around, trying to find his location, because the game had just shifted from a straightforward fight into a hunt in the forest. Of course, clones or not, it was 6 against 1, so they had to admit that it would have been quite dumb of Ren to try fighting them head-on. Maybe if they were average ninjas, this would have forced them to pair up and split up to get a better chance at finding Ren in the forest. Alas, be a Kugan. It took Hinata's clones exactly 10 seconds to locate Ren, considering that the entire nearby forest was in her vision range. Ino and Hinata's clones quickly reorganized, made a plan, and jumped into the forest, knowing that Ren was aware there would be no hiding from them, which meant traps. Joy. Ren smirked as he felt the girls split into 3 pairs and run straight toward him through the detection seal. He had 3 kunao in his hand, all sporting a new exotic exploding seal. He did not prepare any traps. It was pointless. Hinata would see them. At most, that would slow the girls down, and well, the whole purpose of this little exercise was for him to test his seal, so he was kind of half-assing it. But it was okay. There were only 6 of them. 6 Chunin level Kunoichi clones versus him. Easy peasy. He could play around a bit. He hoped. 1 pair of Ino and Hinata clones burst out of the foliage, running straight at him. His senses focused on the sides where the other pairs were currently encircling him, and he gave the visible Hinata clone a cheeky wink. Her eyes widened as he disappeared, but it was too late. Ren substituted with a pre-prepared rock currently to their left side and instantly threw 1 kunao straight at the visible Hinata's clone. Then, he had to quickly substitute again because a second later, a wind bullet courtesy of the Ino clone impacted his position, shredding everything in its path. The attacked Hinata clone spun into chitin, and Ren's eyes widened when his kunao impacted it and the seal exploded. It should have turned her to salt, but unexpectedly, the effect was chakra-based. It was basically a wave of chakra that turned things to salt, and the chitin repelled the chakra. So, the wave of chakra was repelled and pushed away from Hinata, turning everything 3 meters in front of her into salt, including Ino's clone. Ren mirthfully giggled. He just couldn't help it. The expression of Hinata's clone, when she realized she had saltified her teammate by accident, was pure gold. He opted to not finish the shocked Hyaga clone and instead quickly noted in his notebook that chakra-repelling techniques might be an inconvenience for his bombs. That was honestly a downer. His bombs no longer felt so invincible. Well, it is what it is. Ren jumped back while putting his notebook back into his back pocket, a senbon landing where he previously stood. His eyes widened a bit and he resisted the instinct to shield himself with his arms or substitute again. He just activated a seal on his chest. The senbon exploded with an ear-shattering boom, sending metal shrapnel all over the place, shredding the nearby trees, but Ren was left unharmed, a thin layer of a spherical chakra shield flickering in and out of existence around him. He frowned. It was way weaker than he hoped for. He wanted it to be something like a force field, but, how disappointing. One explosion and metal shrapnel was all it took to almost destroy it? He decided he needed to refine this seal more. But he wasn't given the time to note that into his notebook because another Ino clone did not wait even for the dust cloud from the explosion to clear before rushing into it, swinging her katana sheathed in intense wind chakra. Ren used his speed to sidestep a pressurized wind slash, letting it pass him by and cutting straight through the trunk of the tree behind him, loudly felling it. He then ducked under Ino's follow-up sword slash, releasing one kunao from his grip and letting it harmlessly and lazily spin through the air. Ino was already slashing down at him when he substituted again. From his new position, Ren could see how the clone's eyes widened and she instantly used a wind technique to push the kunao away from her. A viable tactic, but she was just a tad bit too late. The kunao exploded, and caught the clone's face in the exploding radius, making Ren cringe with a bit of guilt when the clone released a piercing shriek of immense pain as the surface of her face turned to salt that instantly rubbed into the injury and blood, causing the girl to let go of her sword and clutch at her no longer existent face in sheer suffering-filled shock. It lasted barely 2 seconds before the clone destabilized and popped out of existence, yet Ren knew he would have nightmares today of Ino dying like that. That soured his mood quite a bit. Only the utterly enraged expression of frustrated fury on the last remaining clone of Ino managed to make him crack up a small smile again. He was so glad that he refined his detection seal enough to give him a visual effect, even though it was far from perfect just yet. The last clone of Ino actually winced when her counterpart popped. Then she indignantly stomped her foot on the ground in frustration and almost yelled out, but she stopped herself, knowing it would give away her position. Well, Ren already knew where she was, but she didn't need to know that. Okay. He felt a bit bad. He did enjoy Ino's body for hours on end last night and this morning, so he decided to cut her some slack. It was time to target Hinata. But the salt seals would not work on her unless he took her by surprise. A grin spread on his face just as one Hinata clone finally found him and decided to engage him in close-quarter combat. A wise choice, now that she knew she could use chitin to no-sell his salt seal. Sadly for her, it played directly into his hands. He threw a kunao at the girl running at him. She was almost upon him, only 4 meters away by then, so even if she chitined, she wouldn't be hitting him with the splash damage. That was important. He didn't want her to hesitate due to the possibility of harming him like she did with the Ino clone. Predictably, the Hinata clone used chitin to block the explosion as Ren eagerly waited and observed the effect because what he threw at her was not a salt seal. The seal exploded, sending time-stopping waves of chakra that instantly clashed with the chitin technique, and it turned them around, flinging them back in the opposite direction. But there was not just one wave from his time-stop seal, so waves of stop time going in one direction impacted waves of stop time pushing in the opposite direction. Split second. That's all it took. The air, as if hardened in the time, surprisingly did not stop within the explosion radius as it should have. Instead, the place where the two waves met became a sort of immovable object. That's how it seemed to Ren, and he abruptly got a new idea for a barrier. But his mind couldn't dwell on it as the moment the air solidified, Hinata's chitin suddenly stopped and Ren flinched, his expression twisting in horrified wonder. A human wood chipper is how he would describe what happened next. Hinata's body rammed in a rapidly spinning speed straight into the immovable hardened air made out of stop time and went through it like a knife through butter. Except, that turned her body into a fine red mist. There was no resistance. 1 second there was the spinning Hinata, the next, there was red mist floating in the air. Just like that. Ren inwardly winced. That was supposed to be his non-lethal option. He doubted the clone actually realized it was dead yet. His body subconsciously shuddered as he gulped. His new toys were quite something. Then the red mist puffed out of existence and Ren forcefully calmed his tension-filled discomfort. This might not have been such a great idea, after all. He did not enjoy seeing his girls die in such a gruesome way, even if it was just their clones. If they simply popped out of existence upon being killed, it would have been fine, but his bombs were too instantaneous. The clone technique did not register its demise before the vivid visual effect happened. Releasing a sigh, Ren showed a self-deprecating smile as he idly wondered where the other two Hinata clones and the last remaining Ino clone were. They should have been all over him by now. Oh, well. Ren pushed through his rising apprehension and focused on the task. 3 clones were done and dusted, 3 more to go. He checked the detection seal and owlishly blinked as his head robotically turned toward the sky. Blinking again, Ren groaned. "You gotta be fucking shitting me, Ino." He wanly complained as he gawked at the completely silent and barely visible but massive dragon made of directed wild wind currents spooling on each other glaring at him. It towered not only over him but also over a good part of the surrounding forest around him. It was so damn quiet that if he didn't check the seal, he might have totally missed it before it rammed into his posterior. The wind chakra control necessary for that monstrosity to exist was not something Ren could even comprehend. Ino was totally holding out on him, the cheeky girl. Fortunately, they were far enough from the village so hopefully nobody would notice it. And look, he had found the remaining Hinata clones too. They were fueling lightning chakra into the wind dragon, causing violent streaks of lightning to course through its body. With a strained smile, Ren started to regret teaching the girls combination techniques. The wind dragon suddenly slightly leaned back in preparation to strike before lunging forward, directly at Ren, releasing a roar full of shrieking winds. Chapter 80 ch80 Impressively disappointed seeing the wind dragon coming at him, Ren's perception of time slowed down and for a brief moment, his mind experienced a WTF moment. He wondered how a single clone could pull out something like this, but then he realized he destroyed 2 clones already and their chakra went back not only to the original Ino but also to the remaining clones, so the last one had a little less than 2 clones worth of chakra at its disposal. Even then, this was most likely a one and done fuck you technique, and Ren doubted the clone was going to last past using it. Still, it was an immensely impressive jutsu. The thing with Ino was that her ability to practice control, elemental or otherwise, and create techniques in her mindscape where the time is slowed down was simply busted. Ren loved to call it a cheat, because that's what it was. Sure, she could not increase her chakra reserves, physical prowess, or get combat experience by training there, but it was a little bit over 6 months since Ino started training under him and created said mindscape training technique for herself. Ren remembered making some half-hearted calculations in the past, and while he didn't have all the necessary data to make them completely precise, he could still say that during this past half-year, Ino trained her control and wind nature for at the very least a decade and a half in her mindscape. No rest, no sleep, just all her time of work put together. He was not exaggerating when he said the girl was putting in human effort into her training. It just wasn't readily visible because it happened in her mind. To be frank, Ren stopped paying attention to her advancements in wind nature manipulation because of this. She was so far along the proverbial development line that what she was doing might as well be magic to him. People said that Sarutobi mastered elemental manipulation, but that's a misnomer. What the old man did was to master all the exercises available. There was way more to controlling wind nature chakra. Things that ninjas haven't discovered just yet. Ino, however, was fully intent on making headway and creating her own control exercises, her own techniques, her own way of controlling the wind. She even got it into her head to use the wind chakra to recreate the sword slashes Ren described when telling her about One Piece swordsman. There was simply no way to keep up with the cheating blonde when it came to elemental manipulation. To give a better picture, Ren doubted that the Hokage could use this particular wind dragon technique even if Ino was willing to teach him. That's how much wind chakra control was necessary to pull it off. The thing was just slightly smaller than the Hokage monument, for sage's sake. Putting together all the time Sarutobi spent training wind nature chakra in his lifetime, nothing else included, would at most amount to maybe a year? Year and a half? At best, it still wouldn't be enough. Ren was probably overestimating it anyway. Sarutobi knew wind techniques and mastered the wind nature chakra exercises available, but the wind was not his go-to elemental nature. But Ino did not need to sleep or eat in her mindscape. She could just grind, and grind, and grind some more. She was the same kind of freak as Naruto when it came to the ability to train, and much like his future self, she had bull-headed determination in spades. Sometimes Ren wondered if he wasn't in some alternate universe where Ino was the protagonist, but that sounded a bit too far-fetched. In reality, the strength came from training, not missions. It wasn't like in those stupid fanfictions where the main character goes on a mission and somehow gets a power-up along the way because the author decided so. Fighting strong foes was not how people got strong, that's how they get killed. Missions and fights to the death only enable people to learn how to give it their all. Nobody functions at 100% all the time, but in that moment of life and death, a person is capable of breaking past his limits and giving it his all to survive. It is not a power-up, though. No, those happen in the training field, by learning new techniques, training control, increasing chakra pool, and so on. It is why ninjas spend so much time training. They did not have Super Saiyan shenanigans going on. Participating in a mission is, in fact, hindering their strength development. Ninjas go on missions for the village and to earn money, not to get stronger. M-O-N-E-Y. The thing that moves the world. Missions can last weeks. Weeks with almost no effective training and more often than not, no combat. It is more likely that when a ninja returns from such a mission, he will need to do some catch-up training to fix the slight decrease in his prowess because skill and muscle atrophy were a thing for the average scrubs that did not have Ren's gravity seals. May they all suck in peace. The only reason why Ino was not an S-rank ninja by now after spending over a decade and a half training her wind nature chakra, was that her chakra reserves were still at around mid-Chunin range and her physical prowess was also definitely not on Jonin level yet. For an academy student from the Yamanaka clan, that was already impressive. The last half year of training did her a lot of good, but Hinata and maybe Suzuki, probably the only ones in her generation, still had slightly more chakra available than her. Naruto did not count. He was too Mary Sue to make the list. That and Ino lacked combat experience. She lacked that a lot. Because really? All that prowess and control that would make even Tsunade look like a particularly dim-witted academy student, and the thing Ino's clone decided to do with it is throw a big-ass wind dragon at him? One that would delete all her remaining chakra out of existence? Ren was impressed she had enough control to reduce the chakra requirements of that massive wind monstrosity so much to be able to pull it off, yeah, but he was also impressively disappointed. Just from the top of his head? She could have learned how to change the temperature of her wind, making it scalding, or freezing, or how to solidify it. That would have cost her much less chakra and would have been much more effective. Hell, he could do that with wind nature to a much smaller degree. Increasing or decreasing the temperature by 1 or 2 degrees was not that hard. he just lacked the control to go plus ultra with it. And Ino clearly lacked creativity and ideas. Maybe even scientific knowledge, but that was not her fault since it wasn't readily available in this world. Elemental bullets and dragons, that was where the fantasy ended in this world for your average ninja. Literature was abysmal and the fantasy genre was almost non-existent. Ren started telling the girls stories from his past life for fun and to inject some much-needed imagination into their thinking capabilities. But clearly, Ino wasn't utilizing it much when it came to practical application. She could have separated the individual gases to siphon oxygen from the proximity of his enemy. Or maybe even changing the air to be poisonous gas without any visual clue just to check the particular part of the Geneva checklist and introduce the ninjas to some good old chemical warfare. Now, after he created his salt alteration seals, Ren knew it should be possible. Hard as hell and probably improbable for your normal jonin to ever get to that level of elemental manipulation even if they did have wind nature, but Ino was an outlier. Ren failed to do that. And he did try. But he wasn't that good with wind nature to manage it, so he pretty much gave it up in favor of seal work. That worked for him very well so far. But now, he decided he would need to sit the girl down and give her some pointers on killing efficiency one of these days. As cool as big-ass dragons were, they just weren't it for a ninja fight. Alas, for now, he needed to deal with the big-ass fuck you dragon coming at him courtesy of his impossible blonde. Bringing out the soul windmill shuriken he had stored in his storage seal, he decided to go all out as a string of characters started to slither across the massive shuriken while his chakra pool started to rapidly deplete, creating one big-ass exotic explosive seal for the big-ass dragon. Author note, I started explaining Ino's BS and I couldn't stop myself from making it into an entire chapter. Honestly, this practically wrote itself. Not really all that happy it interrupted the fight scene, but it is what it is, I guess. Every subscriber brings us closer to more epic novels. Join Infinite Novel today. Chapter 81, CH81, epically exotic exploding effects. The big seal forming on the massive windmill shuriken greedily consumed Ren's chakra, until he had roughly only 20% of his reserves left when he was done with it. By then, the seal was a proper beast, but Ren didn't have the time to admire it as small but bloody lacerations started forming on his skin, causing his blood to seep out as Ino's wind dragon approached and he started feeling the increasing wind pressure pressing him down. The wind dragon's body was made of such pressurized winds swirling around each other that even the air surrounding it became sharp, and despite it still being a few meters away from Ren, it was already cutting. A shiver went up his spine. If it was this bad at a distance, he didn't want to know what actually getting hit by it would do to a person. Much to his discomfort, this reminded him far too much of Raisin Shuriken's effect. But there was nowhere to run. The wind dragon was too massive. It was going to destroy everything in a several dozen meters radius. An excited smile appeared on Ren's face as adrenaline filled his veins while his hair bound in a ponytail wildly flailed in the furious winds, mirroring the nearby trees. Ino definitely got too carried away. He could almost hear the pounding of his heart through the deafening swishing and whistling sounds of the wind. Ren threw the shuriken, aiming at the dragon's maw, and watched it with keen excited interest and trepidation as it neared its target, only for the winds surrounding the dragon to affect it. The metal creaked. The blades cracked and twisted. Cuts started appearing on the surface of the shuriken. A worry-filled Ren, but it all lasted barely 2 seconds. Then, the seal destabilized, and Ren was abruptly lifted from the ground due to a sudden airwave hitting him while the world was drowned in the sound of shattering glass. His body was thrown back until his feet landed once more on the ground and he slid back for a few meters with his arms instinctively positioned in front of his face to guard from the still wild razor-sharp winds. But not for a second did he stop watching the effect his seal had created, wonder and awe filling him so deeply that a small part of him started to sympathize with Bakuda and Deidara for being explosion-loving nutcases. The winds themselves started turning into glass, the effect quickly spreading. It reminded Ren of seeing something freeze really fast, but instead of ice, the wind dragon became glass. Its maw was first, then its face, neck, upper torso. The effect continued, accompanied by a loud screeching sound, until half of the wind dragon turned into glass before it finally stopped, Ren's seal reaching its limit. What was left was a massive glass statue of a dragon made of uncountable swirls folding over each other, as big as half of the Hokage monument. But a moment later, the other half of the wind dragon technique, the half that was still made of pressurized winds, smashed into the glass statue and exploded, sending it rapidly crashing to the ground as glass shattered while Ino's chakra powering the winds finally used its last shred of power and dissipated with a bang. The ground shook from the impact of a hail of sharp glassy shards of various sizes raining all over the surroundings at breakneck speeds. Ren hastily ducked behind a nearby tree, waiting until the storm of glass shards passed with a wry smile on his face showing how relieved he was that his seal stopped the wind dragon. For a moment, he was worried there. Fortunately, he had the glass alteration seal. The salt one would do exactly nothing there. For some reason, it couldn't alter air to salt, so it wouldn't have worked very well against a wind technique. Ren had no idea why that was a thing. It just worked that way. It's not as if he 100% understood these seals and their workings. He discovered how to turn things into salt because one day, he was cooking and in the middle of it, he found out that either Ino or Hinata had used up the last of his salt. The woes of letting his girls use his apartment. He was still annoyed because of that when he made his clones for some seal experiments later that day, so his clones decided to make a seal that would create salt. The clones did not exactly expect to succeed. It was just a silly idea to play around with and waste time. And it wasn't supposed to be a combat seal either. Their goal wasn't to make some new murder machine. It was for fun and to never run out of salt during cooking. How was he to know it would affect humans so easily? Or that it would have been so effective in combat? Once he figured out that little tidbit, his murder ninja senses started tingling. It didn't let him sleep until he used this new discovery to make new, more powerful explosive seals. And they were damn dangerous. Hell, even the 1 meter effect radius was an artificially made limiter he put in the seal. It was there to make it cost efficient and to ensure the area of effect would not fluctuate. That way, Ren always knew the exact strike zone of his seals. He glanced over the grass littered with multiple glassy shards, but obviously, he could make the area of effect bigger. But the chakra cost was a killer. This wasn't something he could use in the field because by now, he would have been dead against an experienced opponent after using up so much chakra in one go. Ren didn't want to admit it, but he felt a bit wobbly after that stunt. Fortunately, through the detection seal, he could sense Ino's last clone puff out of existence because it used up all of its chakra for the wind dragon. Only the last 2 clones of Hinata remained. Ren groaned and rolled his shoulders. He was tired as hell. To be honest, he did not expect the 6 clones to push him this much. He would rate himself as an elite Jonin level combatant. He might not have the experience of Kakashi Hatake, but he had his own weapons that made him just as dangerous. Ino and Hinata, well, they were around Chunin level combatants right now. Maybe not with their control, which was way better than it had any business to be. Their elemental manipulation was solid low Jonin level for Hinata and beyond S rank for Ino. But physically and chakra reserve wise, the girls were Chunin. They could not match Ren's speed and reaction time. Not really. And that gave him a huge edge against them. So, it was a small wonder they pushed him this far. He was quite proud of them. Despite the risk of sounding arrogant, he did think he was pushing that S-rank prowess. With his new seals? He'd say he was just deadly enough to be there already. A small chuckle escaped Ren's lips as he took a half-step back just as Hinata's clone ambushed him by springing out of the ground, her fingers jabbing into the air where his armpit was just a moment ago. Heh, that would have immobilized his entire arm if it hit. His cinnamon roll was ruthless. He approved. Undeterred by her failure, the clone instantly sprang into action and engaged Ren in close-quarter combat, sending palms, jabs, finger pokes, and even some unhyaga kicks at Ren, especially the one aimed at his balls was not cool, who was either parrying the strikes or evading them by stepping slightly out of Hinata's reach with a small amused smile on his lips. All that amazing hyaga taijutsu prowess was worthless if the user could not land a hit. Unfortunately for Hinata, he was both faster than her and knew exactly what her reach was. So, evading her at the last possible moment, just to frustrate her more, wasn't very hard for him. If the girl wanted to beat him in taijutsu, she would need to get more creative than a straightforward rush. But of course, Ren was aware that the second clone was cooking something. He had no idea what as he could just sense its presence and didn't have the time to get the visuals because he was a bit preoccupied with dodging. But it was nearby, doing something. Ren parried a palm strike and jumped back, trying to make a bit of distance between him and Hinata only for the girl to instantly accelerate in an unexpected way via internal lightning manipulation and throw herself at him with a jab aimed at his forearm. Sidestepping it, Ren pulsed his chakra out of the solace of his feet, jumping to the side. Hinata used the wall walking exercise to abruptly stop her momentum, turned to the right, and leaped after Ren, very unwilling to let him out of the close range. Ducking under a kick aimed at his chin and getting into a crouch, Ren let out a sigh. He couldn't use his exploding seals unless he regained some distance from the girl and she clearly knew it. Quickly glancing around for a suitable substitution target, his eyes abruptly widened. Hinata used her heavenly wall technique and the surprised Ren was hit with a wave of chakra straight to his face that flung him back like a ragdoll until his back hit a tree. Ugh. Crouching was not a smart thing to do. He fortunately landed on his feet and, the second Hinata clone flickered in front of him when he was still trying to regain his wits after being treated like a pinball, her expression resolute and her arm already shooting toward his abdomen while holding Raisnon. Heart leaping into his throat, Ren didn't have much time to think. He did the first thing that sprang into his mind and used a chunk of his chakra to force substitution with Hinata's first clone, the Raisnon just shy of an inch from his skin when they swapped places. The second clone could only watch in dismay as her Raisnon went through the chest area of the first clone like a knife through butter and rammed into the tree trunk behind her, grinding out a sizable hole into it just as the first clone finally realized what happened and her face twisted into disbelief before she puffed out of existence. The last remaining clone turned on her heel and indignantly glared at Ren who couldn't help but helplessly shrug with an apologetic expression as he flung a kunao at her. Huffing, Hinata knew it would have some sort of exploding seal so she didn't try blocking it and simply jumped into the foliage of a nearby tree, landing on the underside of a thick tree branch in a crouch. A split second later, she sprang herself forward into a leap at Ren and was midair, halfway toward him when the kunao seal went off. And Hinata shrieked as her world suddenly swam and her Byakugan was assaulted with a blinding something, causing her to reel in surprise and pain. She closed her eyes due to panic but it didn't help the overwhelming sense of pounding irritation and ringing going through her head. Her hands covered her eyes on instinct as she winced at the unexpected sensation. She had no idea how this was possible. Byakugan should not be blinded by chakra. And done. Ren's voice interrupted her inner turmoil as her body flew through the air, and then she felt kunao rammed into the back of her neck before her world went black before she even hit the ground. Watching as the last clone of Hinata puffed out of existence, Ren let himself fall on his ass and let out a huge relieved sigh. It was finally over. He was exhausted. The forced substitution took a lot out of him. The girl really surprised him with it. He did not expect Raisnon. He had to admit, much to his embarrassment, that he had forgotten he taught her that technique. It's not as if she ever used it since she learned it. Nevertheless, a small smile appeared on his face. He was satisfied with his girls. Yes, he did hold back and hasn't used clones. Neither did he fight seriously as he focused mostly on trying out his new seals. But they still managed to surprise him enough to almost land some nasty attacks on him. Sadly for them, they lacked combat experience. Well, now he knew how he was going to torment them for the next few months. His previous spars with the girls where his clones were running circles around them did help them, but it was clearly not enough to make them capable of participating in the big boy league. He had 9 more months to get them to that level before they graduated. Nothing some specialized training art torture could not accomplish. It was time for the kitty gloves to go off. Ren's eyes strayed toward the hole in the tree left there by the raised-on as the lacerations covering his body stung, and he remembered how close he was to having his guts take an involuntary trip through a blender. Well, alright. Maybe the kitty gloves should stay on for a few months. At least until he properly figured out a chakra-based force shield. Safety first, right? Chapter 82, ch 82, Date with Hinata. 1. Ren stood in his kitchen, his arms around Hinata as they kissed. Her small hands were clutching at his casual white shirt as her tongue eagerly explored Ren's mouth. He almost wanted to take the hem of her loose lavender shirt and pull it off her, his fingers twitching to do it. But reason prevailed, and in the end, Ren only sneaked his hands underneath her shirt, enjoying the feel of her warm skin on her lower back. Glancing at the stove, Ren suddenly pulled away from Hinata, much to her mewling protest as she subconsciously leaned forward, wishing to continue, but Ren just pecked her forehead and shook his head. "The dinner is done," he said, making Hinata reluctantly turn her head away from him with a small blush as a happy smile appeared on her face. So far, their date was very casual. Just him and her in his house, spending time together while talking, cooking, and kissing. Ren knew Hinata. She did not need anything fancy. She had enough fancy in her clan, so much that she was sick of it. No, she was an affection-starved girl who felt under constant pressure in her own home. So, Ren tried to make this experience as comfortable and homey as he could while showering her with casual affection. And if the enamored expression on her face was anything to go by, she was absolutely loving it. They worked together to prepare the table and clean up the kitchen before they sat down with plates of the food they cooked and started eating. Ren had to admit, Hinata was a great cook, and he told the girl so, making her proudly straighten her back even though she tried to deflect the praise. The sweet smile she gave him, though, almost melted his edgy black heart. They talked about training, her time at the academy, and she even complained about her home life, and Ren listened with a small wry smile. It was a bit sad that they didn't have much of a common topic that didn't involve ninjaing in some way. But Hinata was the Hyuga princess. She was not really allowed to have hobbies that wouldn't prove useful in her future. Everything she did was some sort of training or would have some sort of use for her future ninja career. The only thing she confessed she was allowed to do that didn't stink of preparations for her duties was knitting, and she was quite good at it, too. The mittens she had given him for his birthday were very nice. But even that was pretty much considered a good skill for a traditional Hyuga woman to have and a great way to train the finger dexterity. The girl was really upset about it. When she was younger, she wanted to play ninja with other kids, but well, that was beneath her station as a main branch Hyuga heiress. When she wanted to participate in a sleepover she was invited to, that was beneath her station as a main branch Hyuga heiress. When she wanted to paint her nails, even that was beneath her station as a main branch Hyuga heiress. When she, holy hell, it was no wonder the Hyugas were such stuck-up sad sacks if this was how their childhood looked like. Hinata's life revolved around 2 things. Ninja training and education to be the future head of the clan. When it came to the ninja training, she had utterly hated it before she had met Ren, who made it enjoyable for her. She was always demanded to give it her all only to be always scolded that her all was not good enough. She won a spar in the academy and came home to tell her dad about it, wanting to be praised and acknowledged like any normal kid. She could dream on. Winning was expected from a Hyuga. She better win all her spars from now on, or else. She had gotten full marks on a test? Good. Anything less would be besmirching the good name of the Hyuga clan. She better not disappoint the clan's expectations. Hinata had a lot to complain about, and Ren just held her hand while patiently listening to her rant and pour her heart out to him, wiping a stray tear or two here and there when the relief of being able to just let go overwhelmed her enough to tear up. She had never even wanted to be a kunoichi, but her path was locked and since she was born, she resented it for the longest time, but she also wanted to make her father proud. With an embarrassed smile, she did admit that she loved the fantasy of being Ren's personal kunoichi, and Ren felt his pants become quite tight out of nowhere. Personal kunoichi were something the nobles kept, and let's just say they served more on their knees and backs than in other capacities. The girl was clearly reading the kinky sort of romance books. Ren just smirked at her and graciously accepted her fealty, making her stutter and stammer with an adorable blush, even though she had not made any oath. At least the joke lightened her upset mood. And as for the education to become the next clan head, Hinata was still getting lessons in that direction despite Hanabi being declared the heiress. And that was only natural. What many people in Ren's previous life missed, but they really couldn't be nagged at because even Hinata did not think of it, was that Hinata and Hanabi were females. That is a hugely important fact. Between Hayashi and Hisashi, one was getting sealed. Both are male. There is no other way. But both Hinata and Hanabi had the option to become a wife of some other main branch man and thus wouldn't be sealed. Hinata was so hyper-focused on the cursed seal and overly worried about the future that she completely missed the fact that there was no chance of Hanabi ever getting sealed. Explaining that to her made her very embarrassed and uncomfortable, but she needed to hear it. Her motivation was misguided. Half of the reason for her training was to save her sister, but her sister didn't need saving. The only one who was under the threat of being sealed was Hinata herself. And that was because of her opinions on the cursed seal. She had stated out loud in the past that she hated it, and as future heiress? That instantly made her the enemy of the elders. No matter that she was just a child back then. Frankly, it was cartoonishly petty, in Ren's opinion. They made problems for her every step of the way because of a few words she said as a kid. They did not want somebody like her as clan head. They were so salty about it that they demanded to seal her rather than betroth her to one of their grandsons and let her be a trophy wife fit only for breeding more Hyagas without sealing her. But even if she got sealed, the heiress lessons would still be useful to her because Hinata would not be just another servant. Instead, she would fall into Hisashi's previous position by default and would be the head of the branch house. Heck, even if she became the wife of some main branch male, these lessons would still be useful for managing the household of her future husband. So, she had no other way than to go through them. Not that Hinata seemed amenable to the idea of getting it on with one of her cousins. Nor would Ren allow it. He had the brass balls to bomb even Danzo for the attempt on his life. He was willing to do far worse for Hinata. If they pushed it, Ren was not above giving them some selective itakiing. The two of them talked more, topics changing as time passed until Hinata hit something that gave Ren a small pause. "You have never told me what your goal is. What do you want to do in the future?" she asked curiously, making Ren owlishly blink. What did he want to do, indeed? Chapter 83, ch 83, date with Hinata too I think. "I just want to get strong enough that I could survive any future war," Ren replied unsurely. And his biggest problem was that he didn't have a clear path or a plan on how to do it other than get good real fast, bruh. It's not as if he got some cheat or golden finger that would allow him to comfortably grow stronger than Kaguya so he could bend her over his knee and spank the crazy out of her before taking her in as his concubine and have her happily thank him for it. He was on his own, only with his wits and ideas. The asshole who dropped him in this world, if there was one, did not bother to provide him with a cheat. The most reliable plan Ren had so far was to prevent the whole thing from happening, but even then he would need to kill Orochimaru, Kabuto, and the cherry on this whole shit pie, destroy Pain's Rinnegan. No Kabuto? No Madara? No Rinnegan? No Juubi? No Juubi? No Kaguya? Simple, right? Well, no. Excuse him if he was a bit floundering with his goal. He didn't really have any concrete idea how to get there other than keep practicing, keep making new seals, and keep training his companions while hoping for the best. Because what else could he do? If he had Obito's teleportation, he could just pop next to Nagato's original body and slit his throat before poking his eyes out. It would be done. Speedrun finished. But he did not have it. It sounded simple. Just kill Nagato and destroy his eyes. It would solve everything. But Nagato is guarded by several S-rank ninjas, and most of the time, he has an entire ninja village subservient to him around him. Hell, even Kabuto, the easiest target of the three who was right now in Konoha as Orochimaru's spy, was an elite Jonin level combatant. Trying to assassinate him inside the village could go up shit's creek real fast. It's not like Ren could bomb the hospital just to get a chance at killing the boy. Kabuto needed a more personal touch because his healing made him into a proper cockroach. So, even for him, Ren was pretty much stuck in a waiting game for the Chunin exams, where he would be given a golden opportunity to deal with him. And the less said about Orochimaru, the better. Great, now he was starting to be depressed. Mao, if you don't want to tell me, just say so. Hinata pouted, identifying with her Byakugan that Ren wasn't fully truthful with that answer. It made him give her an exasperated smile. Blasted Byakugan. Ever since she managed to do away with the bulging veins, it was almost impossible to lie to her. Rolling his eyes, Ren huffed, alright. It was only half true. I want to get strong because only strong ninjas are truly free, he admitted. Honestly, if the apocalypse was not imminent and he had the time, Ren would probably spend his lifetime trying to figure out a seal that could allow him to travel to a different world. That sounded like such an amazing life goal to him. He wouldn't mind wasting his life on it. Alas, the world was not so convenient. Even if he did start with such research, there was no guarantee he could finish it before Kaguya became a problem. It felt too much like gambling to Ren to risk it. What do you mean? Hinata furrowed her eyebrows, but she was obviously interested. There wasn't much freedom for her in her life, and Ren's words hit a bit too close to home for her. Look at the Sunin. Ren started explaining, pointing his fork at her. They are all roaming the world, doing mostly as they please. Well, Orochimaru is a rogue ninja, but that is beside the point. He chuckled, he and Itaki are rogues in name only. It is just a formality for them. They are so strong that when a squad of Umbu discovers their location, they don't attack them. Instead, they take a detour several kilometers around them. The only people hunting them are pretty much the idiots who had never heard of chakra and who they can dispatch by sheer reflex, even in their sleep. I envy them that. The freedom that comes with that kind of power. He finished with a shrug. So, you want to become Nukanin? Hinata asked in a nonplussed tone and raised her eyebrow at him. And the fact she was not screaming, glaring, or looking at him as if he had betrayed her 6 generations was very telling. She looked a bit sad and uncomfortable, but that was it. Ren shook his head with a snort, reaching out and taking her hand in his. No, I'd like to be more like Jiraiya. A pervert, Hinata asked with an overly innocent look as her lips tugged into a small smirk. Butter wouldn't melt in her mouth right about now. Oh, shush you. I'll show you a pervert. Ren teasingly threatened in a low tone, knowing she perfectly understood what he meant. He got only a grin in return as she exclaimed, please do, I am waiting for that the whole day. For a moment, they enjoyed a companionable silence between them before Hinata's smile slowly fell. I guess that's why you made these dangerous seals. How does time-stop seal even work? That's not supposed to be possible. She half-asked and half-sullenly complained. She still wasn't over the fact that her clone had died before it could even realize it. She had no idea what killed her clone until the spar was over, and when Ren told her it was a time-stop seal interacting with her heavenly wall, her jaw dropped to the floor. As somebody whom Ren taught his explosive seals, Hinata understood at least the bare minimum about the sealing art, even though her talent, and more importantly, interest, in it was non-existent. Give her flesh to mold any day, and she would happily do it, but scribbling symbols was just boring. Effective. Sure. But boring. She loved throwing the exploding senbon around, but that does not mean she loved learning how to create them, and Hinata decided never to do that again. Sealing just didn't agree with her. Not even her desire to free her clan from the cursed seal could overpower her distaste for the sealing art. Ren let out a helpless chuckle followed by a casual shrug. How do you create a personal pocket dimension to store stuff with just scroll and chakra-infused ink? He asked, and Hinata opened her mouth, only for her expression to scrunch in thought as she started to consider it. She had to admit, he had a point. When he put it that way, it didn't sound very logical. Seeing her pondering look, Ren huffed in amusement and entwined his fingers with hers to get her attention back. Ninjas consider it common sense by now. Of course, it is possible to make storage seals with ink and paper. Everybody does it. Duh. He rolled his eyes with a snort. To be honest, even the people in his previous life took this for granted. It was common sense for them too, but if one really thought about that, it did not really make all that much sense. Even a novice in sealing arts can learn how to make the storage seals nowadays. It is one of the first things they learn, but it does not mean they fully understand every principle behind it, Ren said, causing Hinata to nod slowly. He chose this comparison because he knew that she did not understand everything about the explosive seals, yet she could use them easily. Take the Baijuyu seals, for example. Now that he had given her a frame of reference, he could introduce the topic better. Do you really think somebody actually tried to invent a seal that could hold a Baijuyu first? No. The first recorded sealing of Baijuyu was done by the first Hokage's wife when Madara brought the sharing and manipulated Kyuubi to fight the first Hokage, and she was simply desperate. Ren explained. Well, technically, there were documents about Shikaku sealing into a teapot before that, which was probably what gave Mito the idea that her harebrained scheme might work. But the teapot usually did not last for more than a year before Shikaku was free again, so Ren did not count that as a successful Baijuyu seal. So, she decided to stop the Baijuyu by storing it inside of her. Hinata asked in disbelief, her tone showing she was wondering if the first Hokage's wife was an idiot. Ren nodded with an amused expression. Desperate situation calls for desperate measures. She was one of the best seal masters of her time, and she made a great seal to hold the beast. But I don't think the woman actually expected to survive. But she did, right? Hinata asked, a bit moved at the heroism of Mito. Even Ren had to agree that sealing a Baijuyu into her with a seal she put together on the spot and without having any insurance it would work, because nobody had done it before her? He'd be terrified, especially when he knew how often sealing experiments can and do go wrong. And make no mistake, that was nothing but an experiment. She just did not have any other choice than to go through with it and hope for the best. Ren could almost picture Mito shouting Leroy Jenkins as she initiated the sealing. It was both brilliant and jaw-droppingly stupid. But the most important part? It fucking worked. Yes. Her seal held spectacularly for the rest of her life. And it gave the first Hokage the idea to round all Baijuyu up and give them to the other villages like candy in exchange for peace treaties. Ren deadpanned, but it didn't last long because he started laughing out loud at Hinata's dismayed expression. The history books did not share that little tidbit. No. They said the glorious first Hokage negotiated peace with the other rising ninja villages. They did not say how he did it. Because fuck it sounded stupid in Ren's mind, but when he actually said it out loud, Hashirama was a mentally malnourished moron. You don't sue for peace by giving your enemies weapons of mass destruction, especially not ones that need human sacrifice. You are joking. Hinata furrowed her eyebrows, but when Ren just continued snickering, her face scrunched further in mortification. Oh my god, you are not joking. She indignantly realized that the godly figure of the first Hokage they taught about in the academy might not have been that flawless in person. Ren gave her a fond smile and felt a pulse of chakra coming from the kitchen. He pulsed his chakra to answer, and his clone came into the room, holding a plate of freshly baked cinnamon rolls. Hinata's favorite. The clone put them on the table, and Hinata's attention was diverted to the baked delicacies, her earlier mortification completely forgotten, as she quickly snatched one for herself and started nibbling on it like a squirrel, much to Ren's amusement. Ren took one roll for himself as he spoke, my seals are similar. I had an initial idea, and I experimented. He took a bite and didn't speak until his mouth was empty again. I managed to make the seals, but that does not mean I completely understand how they work. If I did, I could do much more with it. Like creating a time chamber for training. Oh, how he wanted to do that. Knowledge and understanding were power. Sadly, he lacked them. If he knew how his time-stop seal fully worked, if he knew every principle in it, he would not be limited to giving his enemies a timeout. My alteration seals are simpler. I do have a certain level of understanding when it comes to them. It's why I managed to make a glass alteration seal after stumbling upon salt alteration by a fluke. But even then, it was a hard process. For now, I can only do salt and glass. Ren shrugged. The fanfictions lied. This stuff was hard as hell. Just because he knew how to turn things into salt did not mean he could now make an infinite supply of gold and diamonds. That was a completely different thing. Unfortunately, he was not a chemist in his previous life. He barely remembered his chemistry classes from school. He didn't know the composition of gold. Well, he didn't know the composition of salt either, but never mind that, so he would have to start from a complete scratch with it, and he just didn't have the time. He would rather use his time for something more combat-oriented than making things turn yellow and shiny. It's not as if he could stop Pain or Obito by throwing gold at them. Now, the time-stop seal, for that one, I barely understand the basics. Ren gave Hinata a smile that showed his distaste, and the Haigwa girl giggled before leaning forward as she brought her fork with a cinnamon roll in front of his mouth to cheer him up. Ren took an exaggerated bite out of the roll, causing a spike of elation to shoot through Hinata as she involuntarily grinned from ear to ear. One day, one of my clones didn't disperse on time. I didn't mind it much, but when, even after 8 more hours, he was still present, I went to check up on him, and voila, I found the bastard frozen in time. Eyes slightly widened and the suggest smile on his lips. Ren playfully clicked his tongue, and Hinata imagined the situation before snickering. Yes, that sounds like you. She kindly admitted, getting a small pinch on her hand from Ren in return, causing her to yelp and give him a playfully warning look followed by a smile. Oh, shut up. Ren stuck his fork into a cinnamon roll and stuffed it into Hinata's waiting mouth, making her let out a small, if a bit exaggerated, moan as she intently watched his reaction. Gulping down, Ren fought a hard internal battle to not avert his gaze. It took me 4 hours to figure out enough about the seal to negate the effect and free my clone, he said irritably, only to jump a bit in his seat when he felt Hinata's toes press into his inner thigh under the table. They slowly went higher and higher, making Ren's breath hitch while the Hyuga minx had a knowing smile on her usually innocent face. She was about to reach his mini-me when Ren grabbed her foot and stopped her in her tracks. I'd like to give you a massage, Hinata offhandedly said, silently ending the topic of seals, and Ren had to inwardly agree that there were more important things they could be discussing. Oh? Really? Ren asked, his fingers running across Hinata's feet in his grasp, causing her to stifle a mewling sound as her toes wiggled because Ren hit her ticklish spot. Yes. I need a guinea pig for my new medical ninjutsu massage skills. She nonchalantly shrugged, trying hard to look casual, but her cheeks were adorably flushed while her eyes were resolute as she slightly quivered because Ren continued to tickle her foot. I agree to use my body for your experiments, Ren solemnly stated, but the cost will be your virginity. He smirked as he found a particularly fun cluster of nerves on her foot, making her whimper. Narrowing her eyes, Hinata sent a discharge of medical chakra out of her foot, straight into Ren's hands, and his breath hitched as his body stiffened from the unexpected wave of pleasure that flooded his body through his hands. He let out an audible moan, much to Hinata's mirthful giggling. Looking at her from under his bangs, the girl looked very pleased with his reaction. Well, now he was truly looking forward to that promised massage. Chapter 84, a massage, YouTube adapted version. Important note, this chapter has been modified to comply with platform policies. The original uncensored version will be available soon on Patreon. Stay tuned. In the meantime, check the first pinned comment for more details. Your beautiful, Ren whispered as he watched Hinata shyly let the fabric covering her slip away. At his words, a happy smile curved her lips, and her cheeks flushed. She took a deep breath, straightening her back with a mix of nervousness and pride. Ren, wearing only his pants, moved to embrace her, but Hinata gently stopped him, pressing her palms against his chest. First, the massage, she teased, making Ren groan in frustration. Showing me this and then denying me is cruel, he protested though without real conviction. Hinata laughed, pushing him toward the bed. Face down, please. With an exaggerated sigh, Ren obeyed. Soon, he felt her weight settling on his back, her bare thighs brushing against his skin. Hinata's hands began moving over his back with expert strokes, alternating between soft caresses and firm pressure. Ren closed his eyes, surrendering to the pleasure of her touch. You have the hands of a goddess, he murmured, drowsy. Hinata smiled, applying a hint of chakra that made Ren stifle a gasp. A wave of heat rushed through him, but before he could react, she adjusted her technique, shifting the intensity into deep relaxation. See, she whispered. Sometimes, you have to let me take control. Ren didn't argue. For what felt like hours, though perhaps only minutes, there was nothing but her hands and the rhythm of their synchronized breaths. Until finally, Ren rolled over and pulled her into his arms. My turn, he said, and Hinata laughed, letting him envelop her in an embrace. Their lips met in a slow, promise-filled kiss. Hinata didn't stop. Not for hours. She was insatiable. Even when Ren grew tired, she persisted with determination until exhaustion claimed them both. As he drifted off, holding her close, Ren had to admit the Hyuga certainly knew how to raise their women. If this kind of passion was common, it was no wonder they wanted to keep it all to themselves. Want to experience every detail? The extended version will be available on Patreon soon. Chapter 85 CH 85 Unsanctioned Vacation. Danzo Shimura sat in a private booth in a tea shop, watching through the conveniently placed window as Ren left the village for a mission. A small smile appeared on Danzo's face as a waitress appeared and brought his order. "Is it done?" he asked without averting his gaze from Ren's back disappearing in the distance. "Yes, Lord Danzo," the waitress said with a small respectful nod before leaving. "Good. Let's see if the bait takes, then." Danzo sighed and took a sip from his tea, finally feeling relaxed after a long time. Initially, he dismissed the notion that the one to bomb his base and cost him many of his loyal and well-trained soldiers was a new ninja like Ren. But around the time he started to be called the bomber, Danzo's suspicions reignited. Unfortunately, it was not easy to get information about Ren. He was far too slippery, far too careful. It only proved to Danzo that the boy had something to hide. More forceful methods were not used because Danzo was a fradash. No, he was not afraid. He was just pragmatic. Another bombing could set his effort back for years. He couldn't afford that. So, he opted for a cautious and slow approach, like any experienced ninja in his position would have done. But now, finally, a chance presented itself to get rid of this thorn in his foot. He just hoped there wouldn't be any complications. Konoha's greater good was at stake. Several months had passed since Ren's relationship with the girls reached the point of no return from the bedroom, and he realized that for the first time in his reincarnated life, he was actually fully enjoying living again. It was an invigorating feeling. It pushed him to try harder and motivated him to progress even though it sometimes felt futile. What does it matter if he reached S-rank prowess when Kagaya could unmake him with a simple gesture? It didn't feel like an accomplishment to be proud of. He still remembered that in most stories he had read in his past life, the protagonists started getting arrogant when reaching this stage. They were all like, "Notice me, senpai. I am S-rank. I am Speckle." But really? S-rank was just a bigger kunao fodder in front of the last boss of the Narutoverse. And let's not even speak about the Atsutsuki clan. Ren hoped they were not a thing, but he probably wasn't that lucky. It felt hopeless, living in this world. Ignorance was really bliss. Sometimes, he envied all the ninjas around who had no idea how shitty the future was most likely going to be. They worried about encountering ninjas from other villages on their missions, about another ninja war erupting, about the prosperity of the village. All reasonable concerns. But they paled in contrast to an alien chakra goddess hellbent on exterminating the humanity manifesting in the world again. Shaking his head to chase away these depressing feelings, Ren wryly smiled and realized he was far enough from Konoha. He checked his detection seal, and after confirming nobody was around him, he teleported to his seal in the land of hot water. The past few months were very nice for him as far as spreading his transportation seal network was concerned. He took several quick C-rank missions that led him to other countries and used his shadow clones to cover as much ground as possible. Now, he had a seal in most countries bordering Konoha. That was an achievement he was prouder of than becoming an S-rank ninja. If he ever needed to run away from Konoha and its hunter ninjas, this would make it a piece of cake. Plus, secretly returning to Konoha would also be extremely easy for him since he had several hundred transportation seals strewn all around the village. Not even a rogue ninja status could separate him from Hinata and Ino anymore. This mission was not very different. Ren took an easy courier mission to the land of hot water and was supposed to deliver some documents to a client. The delivery was expected 3 days from now and was on the other side of the country, closer to the borders with the land of lightning. Ren still had 2 free days thanks to his transportation seal massively cutting out the travel time, so he naturally intended to use the time to unwind and enjoy the famed hot springs. It was just a pity he couldn't bring his girls. Unfortunately, they had the academy, and, to be frank, that sounded like a cheap excuse because that's what it was. He just wanted to enjoy his me time for 2 days. He could have taken them from the village and returned them in the evening. They could have even left clones to curb any suspicion. But no, Ren wanted a few peaceful no-female days. It was what it was. The threesomes were awesome. Hinata and Ino trained together so much that there was next to no jealousy between them. Instead, they loved to team up against him, and they always made it very enjoyable for him. He even made a seal that could store nutrients from food and inject it later on into him in the form of stamina when needed. It was proper magic like bullshit. But once the Pandora's box was open with the time-stop seal, Ren started experimenting left and right, throwing shit at the wall while hoping something would stick. It wasn't working very well, but there were some small highlights. He had a workable direction, and he was slowly making progress. Chakra could even bring back the dead. What was a little stamina potion in the form of a seal compared to that? What? Did somebody actually think he would start physically exercising to keep up with his girls instead of cheesing his seals for some cheat solution? Please. He was better than that. Hinata had her medical ninjutsu to boost her physical strengthening process, but Ren had his seals, and he was still physically way ahead of the girls. In fact, despite their brutal training regime, they did not really lessen the gap in physical prowess between them. And thank the sage for that small mercy. Hail the gravity seals. Glory to the, well, him. As the maker of the seal, he deserved it. Ren would have had a much harder time dealing with them using Konoha's secret technique, teamwork, on him in the bedroom if the girls were as physically capable as him. No, he was good. Cheating his way through with seals worked for him. It did help that he knew how his gravity seals worked to the tiniest detail, and that meant he could use them very efficiently. There was no way he would go the Saitama route. He'd leave that path to Sakugai Uchiha and his new unwanted but relentless sidekick, Sakugai Haruno. His meddling had created abominations. Was it weird that he felt a bit proud of it? Anyway, his girls were stuck at something around 50 to 60% efficiency usage of their gravity seals. That was already jaw-dropping. In a year, they reached the physical prowess of Jonin rank when they started at Genin level of prowess. The seal was an elite soldier printing machine. Wars were started for way less. Hence why Ren kept its existence secret. He didn't want all the other ninja villages to gang up on Konoha in a desperate gambit to either steal the seal or delete it from existence. Unlike his girls, he could use around 95 to 99% of gravity seal's efficiency, so he was still improving a little bit faster than them when other factors were considered despite his lack of physical training. Unfortunately, Ino and Hinata would have to become much better at sealing to get that sweet 95+%. Yet, they just didn't want to spend the next 3+ years focusing only on sealing to get there, and Ren made his peace with that. Chuckling, Ren decided to give his girls a small apology in his mind for not bringing them to the hot springs and decided he would take them to a festival in the capital city or something in the future. Right now, he wanted to have 2 days of relaxing. No ninja bullshit. No work. No sexy kunoichi trying to tempt him into a sex marathon. No responsibility. Just slacking off, hot springs, and good food. He checked into a hotel, picking a quite expensive one for his 2-day unsanctioned vacation. But he could afford it. His venture in the capital city went well. The toys he designed sold like hotcakes, and Ren, the merchant from the capital, was also a hard-working individual, so he had already spread the business to other countries, earning even more money. Ren, the ninja, however, felt that he screwed the pooch with that opportunity. When he first approached Ren the merchant, he had grand dreams of using his otherworldly knowledge to become the richest man and the economic power who puppets the stage from the shadows, you know? Like some main characters in fanfics do? They make it look so easy, too. But it wasn't. His progress there was firmly stuck at toy making. He simply did not have the time to make better products. Between his own training the girls, missions, his work at the barrier core, keeping up with his relationships and friendships, and on top of that his seal experimentation, Ren had no time to spare for something as mundane as figuring out new stuff to sell. It seemed silly. He could have delegated it to one shadow clone and be done with it by now, no? Well, yes, but one less shadow clone for seal experimentation was still one less clone working on getting stronger. He could use only so many of them in a day, and it just seemed like a waste of chakra. Money was not all that important to him. Entering the most famous hot springs of the town while munching on an apple, Ren curiously looked around. Oh, Nariko-chan, you naughty, naughty girl. Who would have thought you could use your tongue in such a way? A perverse giggle resounded through the male section of the hot spring, coming from a big naked man with a mane of white hair who was kneeling near the wall that separated the male and female section while pressing his ear on it to eavesdrop as he scribbled into his notebook with almost wild frenzy. Ren closed his eyes and tried to stave off the headache that had suddenly hit him. Just his luck, from all the bathhouses in this continent, he had to walk into the one Jiraiya decided to use to peep on women today. With a sigh, Ren turned on his heel, fully intending to get away from the creep. He didn't want to get mauled by angry females. But as he started to walk out, Jiraiya suddenly spoke again, not even noticing Ren's presence. Hinata-chan dash, before Ren knew it, the half-eaten apple in his hand sailed through the room and nailed the back of Jiraiya's hand with enough force to make his body flip in the air before his face crashed into the ground with an audible "Ogya." Yes, Ren knew that Hinata was a common name. No, he didn't care. There went his vacation. The best light novels are waiting for you here. Don't miss out. Subscribe on Infinite Novel now.